Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of November the 15th, Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies. Essentially, it will be an evening mostly of presentation in relation to the budget for the year 2022. So, without any further delay, we'll invite what? Mr. Kobo. Mr. Kobo will throw the first ball. It's an honor, sir. So, there. Good evening, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council tonight. I will present the renovation of building budget and update of the program, what we intend to do for the following year for 2022. So, so the renovation program in relation with strategic plan plans to maintain and improve our existing infrastructures. The building renovation program answers answers that. One of the ways that we maintain our existing building is with the index of the condition of the building. What it tries to do is find the percentage of the building that has to be replaced or renovated. When the value of the whole building, we take it, we divide by what is necessary or has to be replaced. Usually in the industry, under 5%, it's a good figure to reach. 5 to 10 is average. So the index of the condition for the city of Dieppe, we have 21 buildings that we will use. We did not assess the Dwaron or Uniplex. We had made the assessment of 19 buildings in the past. So in all, the value of our buildings, if we were to replace them today, all the buildings, it would be $100 million just to show the condition of the building. We're at 1.37. That is excellent. We try to be under 5%, and we're at 1.37. If we look at the necessary maintenance for the next 10 years, it's approximately 7.6 million. Just to give an idea, if we did nothing for 10 years, if we were to invest no money, we would have an index that would be 7.6%. But we try to be under 6%. We're really better, but we're now at 1 point something. But so this is only a projection. If we were to invest nothing in the building, eventually we would be over our figure, the figure that we've chosen. It's 70. Now, what we do is we have two programs for the municipality that we invest. There's the building renovation program where we invest 350,000 a year, and the replacement of the building program that we present for an increase up to $400,000 a year. If we continue to invest, if we were to invest the way we propose, we could bring down to zero, 20% before 2031. So it shows that we're under the focus or the target, but it allows us to keep the buildings in a very good condition. So the building renovation budget, we propose that remain at $350,000. At the end of 2021, would be $100,000. Also, the building replacement program last year, it was at $254,000. We propose to increase it to $400,000 for the year 2022. At the end of 2021, our reserve is at $1,196,000, 1,196,000. What I will present to you is what we plan to do in 2022 for our buildings. So the biggest project is planned for 2022 renovation of the arena, Arthur G. LeBlanc Arena. We have $170,000 that comes from the building renovation program, but the budget is much higher than the project. So I will go into detail of the project. So here, the project for the purpose is to reduce the gas. We would reduce by $37,000. That 6.2% for all the buildings in the city, a reduction of all our building because our biggest consumers, but now with Uniplex, it is the biggest building that consumes electricity, and also the energy yield we could save with what is proposed $92,000 per year, and the return would be 7.3% per year. Would be 7.3 years or so to repay the investment that we would make in as far as energy is concerned. So the total cost of the project that is proposed is $2.5 million. So we applied for the program of subsidy C1. It's a program we would have a loan of $1.5 million and a subsidy of $500,000. So the FCM would give us 2 million. That is 80% of the project, and we have opportunities of having money with the provincial government. That would be approximately 500,000. It would give the 2.5 million for the project. Question: we can take them as we go along. It's easier, Mr. Boutier. Thank you. It's more an information question. When we say 7.3%, what is the length of the program vary for different equipment. Lights, for instance, are 10 to 15 years. 15 years for lights, and some equipment lasts longer, normally 25 years for the energy part. The solar panel is 25 year, between 15 and 25,000, depending on the equipment. Okay, Monsieur Lantin, thank you, Your Worship. A quick question. I saw that there are a renovation already undertaken by LeBlanc Arena. Does it have to do with this or something else? No, it has to do with when we apply, we were allowed to make renovation. We were still eligible, but these renovation we were going to do them anyway. So we decided to start this year to change the lights and the door. We were going to do them, but it's eligible for the program if we are accepted. Thank you, Ms. Gadou. Two questions. How do we establish the focus of 6% for the building? We have an analysis made of our building in 2018, and they give an average of 6% on the market, and that's what we use. And when we say it's the standard, what does it allow us to reach? It allow us, for instance, to have a roof that may be beyond a few years from the lower is the best. Zero is what we're trying to get. 6% gives you a building that is acceptable for the user. It's safe, and it doesn't. It it looks quite new, but it's a question of budgeting. We have buildings that are quite recent in Dieppe. We're lucky as far as that goes, but we try to be better than 6%. When I see 6% as a target and efficiency, whatever you want to call it, we give a good service. We put an appropriate amount to invest. If I look at a figure, at a target, that's where I want to be. If we want a target 6%, you say 1.37. That does not include two new buildings. 1.37 is quite conservative. Why do we approach an approach? where we go
On est
lower
vraiment anti-médecine.
while
On
we're
essaie de
already
mesurer la
under
performance du
the figure.
système
I try to reconcile the recommendation that is coming
loi
with the
d'audition.
fact that we're
Puis là, après
under
ça, on nous a mis encore plus
the
pression.
target and
Ouais, non, je
it
comprends.
will
Mais comme
bring
c'est
us
des
even.
targets
I
partiels aussi,
agree,
je
but
pense qu'il
maybe
y a souvent des choses
the target is not
qui devraient être
aggressive
faites. Fait que
enough. There are
si
things that
zéro
could
pour cent veut dire que tout ce qui est devrait
0%
être
means that everything that should be repaired is repaired.
ça voudrait dire qu'on laisse des
6%
choses
would mean that
qui devraient être
we
faites
are
aussi
letting certain
pas
things that
faites.
should be done
Puis lorsqu'on regarde le
undone.
suivi de la
With
maintenance,
we look maintenance
on
wise,
peut avoir
the,
des,
the
des problèmes
important
avec ça.
preventive maintenance. If we
Ça
don't
va engendrer des
look at
problèmes.
the roof, it
Parce que
could.
quand même
If we don't
de se maintenir assez volontiers,
maintain the roof, it will bring about other problems. But
mais si
I
on
agree
éventuellement dans
with
la
you.
journée qu'on a besoin
Eventually, we'll
d'avoir fait
make other analysis and maybe something else will be found.
le 1% qu'on a trouvé,
The
c'est ça qui va
1% that we
générer
found is what was in the analysis
malheureusement
of
le 2018.
2018.
C'est
The
ça qu'on
other
veut
buildings
avoir
are,
c'est conservateur.
it's very conservative. Yes, it is very conservative. Yes.
On
No, no,
utilise
it's
beaucoup le
cautious.
on utilise le mot
You
prudent.
use the word cautious, not conservative. You're very prudent. Very.
Merci.
Thank you.
J'avais une question.
I had another question.
Ah, OK. Peux-tu
Yeah.
continuer? Alors, quand on regarde ça, pour moi,
When we,
quand on prend une
for
approche
me,
prudente,
when we take
euh,
a cautious
je me pose toujours la
approach,
question aussi,
I
quels
always
sont les
ask
risques
myself the
cumulés?
question: what are
Alors, quand vous
the
faites vos réflexions,
opportunities that were
lorsqu'on
missed
prend une approche comme ça,
when
qui
we
est
take an
ciblée,
approach like
qu'est-ce qui sont
this, where we target
les opportunités manquées?
downward?
Qu'est-ce que
What would
comment vous
be
regardez les
the
opportunités manquées?
missed opportunities? How do
Est-ce
you
qu'on manque
see?
d'insécurité dans les résidences?
Do
Comment
we
est-ce qu'on
put
fait? Est-ce que
what
ça
is it
rentre
we
dans
don't
votre grille
do?
de
Does it
considération?
is it
Ben,
considered in your
le,
calculation? Well,
chaque année,
each year,
parce que le programme ici, ça regarde
the
le programme
program
Renovation,
here,
on a
if
des
we
centres
look to renovate
qui
what
auraient peut-être
exists,
bénéficié d'avoir des
there might be
flexibilités
opportunities of having
par exemple, les centres
energy
communautaires.
efficiencies.
Ça, c'est
The
des centres
solar
qui devraient être
panel,
faits
that's an
dans des
addition
espaces aménagés
to
dans
what we
des
have.
endroits
It's an
qui
addition to
pourraient
the building. There's something else we
peut-être
could
qui
do.
sont pas efficaces
There might be
ou qui
some
sont pas
equipment that are
qui
not
sont pas dans les bonnes conditions. Fait que
effective,
les agents qui pourraient
but
les remplacer.
we
Parce que
would
nécessairement, le
spend
coût
more
n'augmente
money
jamais.
to change it. It would be better for the
Mais c'est pas dans ces
environment, but
calculs ici parce que la
it would not
conditionnement
be
est
in
pas
these
bon.
calculations because the equipment is still good, but it's not efficient.
Merci.
C'est beau?
And you
Continue? Oui.
continue.
Oh, Steve, oui. Vas-y.
See,
Excusez-moi, je sais pas qui va prendre
sorry,
la parole ce soir, mais
I was not
j'ai
supposed to
aimé ce
speak
que vous avez
tonight,
bien
but
expliqué. Il est
to
vraiment
add to what he just said
la
and to
question de votre mission.
answer Councillor Godbout's question,
Ici, nos bâtiments,
what
comme
he
je l'ai
just said,
mentionné dans ma
our
présentation,
building, and in
nos
my
bâtiments
presentation the other
sont
day,
prometteurs
our
parce qu'ils ont
buildings are in
50 ans.
very good state
Mais
because they're
si au
young.
bout de 50 ans,
But over
on
a period
investit,
of
comme vous l'avez
50 years,
mentionné,
as I mentioned,
un 3 à 4
we'll
millions,
invest 3 to 4 million per year, not for
on
the next
arrive
10 years,
à
but
15 ans,
for
15 ans
in
bâtiment
15
neuf.
years from now. So if we don't increase the budget now, we'll have a problem in 15 years from now. So that's why
On suggère d'augmenter à
we
400 000.
suggest to
Puis on
increase
va
to
aider les gens
400,000.
avec notre montant de
And you will
construction.
see other
Mais ça,
years it will increase also. That
il y a
money goes
aussi,
in reserve, yes, but this year,
on en parlait avec
I don't know if he wants to talk
le
about it.
bassin du centre aquatique.
With the
C'est
Aquatic Center
un
basin,
très gros montant.
it's going to
Puis ça
cost a
aussi, ça
very
augmente
big
de plus en
amount.
plus.
That's why we're increasing the amount.
Merci, Steve.
Thank
Ici,
you,
je peux
Steve.
reprendre l'arrêt aussi le
I
graphique que
could
j'avais
go back
présenté.
the
C'est
graphic
vrai que
that I presented
ça augmente
from
énormément.
2031. We can come back if you want, but it will increase at that time. Excuse me.
Donc, on continue avec le projet.
So continue with the
Donc, ici,
project.
il y a
Okay,
six, j'ai séparé le
here
projet à
I
l'intérieur
separated the project
en
that we are
sections.
doing at
Donc, on va passer
Leblanc
les
in
sections
6 sections. Let's go one by one.
Donc, architecture.
Architecture.
Donc, ici, on parle de
Here we talk
de
about
peinturer l'auvent-entrée
painting
jaune.
the post
Ici,
yellow
après ça, on a des blocs de
at the
béton
entrance,
taillés autour
and then we have
des
concrete
portes glissantes que, justement, on
and
voulait
sliding
éviter
windows
de faire
that, as we were
Ici,
was
on a
mentioned,
aussi pour l'architecture
$100,000 are planned.
récupération de
We're
chaleur.
doing it now.
C'est la plus grosse partie
Heating
de
repair.
l'énergie.
There's a
Donc ici, si
highest
on fait
amount for
simple,
the
ça là,
energy.
c'est un ensemble, mais en gros, les compresseurs
In
de l'aréna,
essence,
en fait,
the compressor for the arena, the way it works, it throws away the heat towards the outside with the compressor, with the Olympic surface. We have enough power to heat the whole building if we wish. So it's strategic to heat the biggest space when it comes to the room on an individual basis could cost more. So we would heat the seats in the building and the two ice surface, the general heating of the building. We heat the air that are in the exchangers at the main and area, and this, you don't want the condensation in the arena. If we can have free heat, we recuperate it with the compressor. We save a lot, and the heat of hot water, so it allow us to save a lot of money.
Mais aussi, il y a l'économie à avoir
Also, there are savings
sur
ahead
la surface Saint-Anselme. Il y a des
on
équipements comme
the surface in Saint Anselme.
les
There are
messages
savings
ils ont
possible.
quand même
There's so many.
d'amélioration
There's
des
a
équipements.
lot of savings that can be had.
Les nouvelles bandes à la surface Saint-Anselme, ça fait partie du projet qui est proposé aussi.
The new
Les nouvelles bandes qui se concordent plus à
bench,
l'année 2023
we look at the year
qui fait
2023
partie du projet.
to
Donc,
do it, but it would be
c'est en
part of
cours
the project because we
avec la RCM aussi.
still have 3 years with the
On
FCM
propose
if we decide to go
d'avoir
that way.
deux Zamboni
And we
électriques
plan to have two
avec
electrical
Zamboni
Zamboni.
électrique
Now we have two
Uniplex.
electrical
Ça fait partie
Zamboni at the
du projet. Donc,
Uniplex,
on propose donc les deux
so we
électriques.
could buy two electrical
Ils ont
one.
décidé excuse-moi,
Excuse
d'utiliser
me,
le mot Zamboni, là,
we use
c'est
Zamboni.
pas, c'est-tu des Zamboni? Parce que
Are they
c'est
Zambonis really? Because that's the word we use.
Oui, on
Sorry,
utilise des vraies surfaceuses.
c'est la même,
it's the same.
les mêmes qu'on a à l'Uniplex.
The
Non,
same one we have at the
c'est des
Uniplex.
surfaceuses
No,
électriques. Donc,
would be electrical
on
surface
peut décider quelle
resurfacer. We have not decided.
OK.
We would have to call for a
Vous allez
tender,
probablement,
and there probably
si
would
vous
be
nécessitez quand même à voir si
efficiencies
c'est
to be had
le même équipement en termes
if it was the
d'investissement,
same equipment as far
de
as
maintenance.
trading
rébellion, c'est ça.
equipment
Des
pieces and
des
heating.
appels d'offres
Well, we'll
pour
have
des
to
équipements
decide
qui sont
when we
ouais,
call for tender.
OK.
That's something to be reconsidered.
Et
Yes.
les lumières, donc les lumières,
The
on remplace
lighting,
toutes
the
les lumières
lights,
qui
we
sont
can
pas
replace all the
des
lights
lumières LED telles.
that are not LED lights in the building.
228 en tout à
We would have 238 in all to
on a
replace.
fait ceux-là du stationnement aussi.
We've done the ones from the parking recently.
Énergie solaire.
Solar
Ça fait une
power,
étude qu'on a
the solar
effectuée il y a pas
power.
mal de
Well,
2 ans passés. Puis
2 years ago,
ça avait été
we
déterminé que le
did
projet
something. It was determined that the building that
potentiel,
had
c'était
most
Arthur J.
potential
Leblanc.
for solar
Donc,
was
on
Arthur J.
proposait
LeBlanc.
d'ajouter des
We
panneaux.
proposed to add some
Donc, nous,
panels.
on veut avoir une
What
production de 100
we want to see the
kilowatts.
production of
Donc, dans le
100
fond, c'est le maximum allowé par
kilowatt.
Énergie Nouvelle-Brunswick
It's what is allowed by NB
présentement
Power to
la ligne de distribution d'énergie Nouveau-Brunswick.
to meet the
Ça représenterait 6% de la
standard of NB
consommation
Power would be 6% of the consumption of the building.
Donc ensuite, ben ça
After
complète ce qui
after
est
that,
présenté pour
that
les
completes
questions directement sur
what
ce
is
projet-là.
presented on this. I don't know if you have a question. I can continue.
Sinon,
Question, Mr. Boutier.
Oui.
Thank you.
C'était une question pour les
It's a
ressources.
question for the Lomboni.
Donc, le coût est 270 000.
Cost is
Puis, ces
270,000.
conditions-là qu'on a maintenant,
We
est-ce qu'on peut
estimate
s'attendre
that
à
we
les
have
vendre
now.
probablement? On
We
s'attend à
feel
qu'est-ce
they'll be sold.
qu'on estime vraiment qu'on
What do
peut
we
se
estimate we can get
disponible
for
parce qu'on
these?
veut
Because we
on veut
say
faire
2 million,
le
but at the
projet
end of the day, for
au moins
the
possible.
city,
On
it's
va
going to be
avoir des
less than
employés
that
qui devraient
because we'll have
s'installer. On a
income,
des
Zamboni.
municipalités qui vont chercher des
Some
subventions pour
municipalities
des
go
aménagements.
and get
Est-ce que
some money
on
for
va
Zamboni.
est-ce qu'on regarde à justement avoir
Do we
chercher
look
d'autres
to
revenus
go
pour
and
les
get more
municipalités?
money to meet those expenses?
Ben, tout de suite,
Well,
avec le programme de la RCM, on a
the FCM program, we have
accès
access to have
dans
funds.
le programme. Donc, on était capable
We
de
can go into program, we could add
d'ajouter des
them.
fonds de
There
disponibles
might be funds available
pour des vrais équipements comme le Zamboni.
for the
Puis avec le
equipment
département,
such as Zamboni with the province.
on a fait une application
FCM, we applied was more for the building. I added Zamboni because we could get percentage if possible, but
on budget avec l'électrique, mais aussi c'était
we
prévu
can
dans
go
aussi
with
les deux
electricity. But it
projets
was
financiers
planned
dans les deux prochaines
to
années.
buy
Là, c'est sûr que
one each year for the next 2 years. That was already
est-ce
planned
que
in
le
the
fonds est
budget.
disponible,
And is there a fund available that we can use? Certainly.
Monsieur Bourg.
Super.
Oh, excusez-moi. Voilà.
Merci. OK.
Thank you.
Steve, tu peux me corriger?
Steve, correct me.
Mais dans le programme
But in the program,
de la flotte municipale, on a nos deux
the
machines
municipal
ice.
fleet,
Est-ce
we
qu'on
have
peut
our
se
two
remplacer pour les
ice
machines qui
machines
vont peut-être
that
être
are
utilisées
planned to
dans
be replaced
le
next
marché
year
soir
and the year
extérieur?
after. But the
Là, on est
replacement of
évalué en
these
fonction
equipment
des machines
were calculated
normales
in
industrielles.
function of the
Alors, c'est
traditional
sûr qu'on va
machines.
devoir
So, of
développer
course,
quelque
the
chose de
electrical
différent
machine is more
et ça, c'est
expensive.
un avantage pour
That's
nous
why it's an
d'avoir un
advantage for
investment
us to have
progressive.
included it
Ça peut
in this
contrebalancer
program.
en quelque sorte
It can
le coût
counterbalance, if you
électrique
wish,
versus
the
plan.
electrical
On veut
compared to
aller avec un
propane. We
financement
can
progressif
go
puis
electrical. We don't know what
faire
model
de la
we'll
paiement.
have. It depends
Est-ce
on
qu'on va
the
inclure sur nos machines
bid or
des
the tender
composants
bid. And we
normalement
call it
qui
that
sont
the
et on vend toujours notre plus vieille
we
machine
sell
qui est
our
aussi
oldest
recevable
machine
aussi
that's in
pour
worse
nos
condition. We keep
évaluations.
one for the ice. We evaluate each time,
Puis ça
and
dépend des années. Il y a des années qu'on
it
a seulement
depends on the
5 000
year. Some
puis
year we only
des
got
années où
5,000,
ça
and
peut
some year
dépendre
we got 10,000.
ce genre de pièces
It
d'équipement
depends
qu'on
on
achète.
that piece of equipment
Ça
year
fait
to
que
year.
oui, puis
It
ces
varies.
fonds-là, normalement,
And these
vont
funds
vers le
normally
programme de remplacement
we
d'équipement
put them
puis
back
d'achat
in the
de
program of the exchange of equipment.
Est-ce que ces machines-là, est-ce qu'on va chercher de la publicité normalement
Do
sur
we
les
get
machines qui sont
publicity
neuves?
on the machine?
Comme
Ouais, non, on
No,
n'a pas fait
we have
de
not done it
mémoire, là,
by
je pense
memory yet, but
il y a eu des démarches de faites pour des machines
there were steps
Uniplex, mais
undertaken
c'était
at
un autre
Uniplex.
dossier, c'est pas ici.
Someone else was taking care
C'est quelque
of
chose qui
the
est toujours une
file. I don't know
possibilité,
where it's at, but it's a
mais
possibility that exists.
on n'a pas actuellement. Je ne sais pas ce
We
qu'on a
don't
comme
have any right now. I don't
par contre.
know if we don't have an agreement with a firm.
Multiplex,
Mark,
c'est le constructeur
the
qui développe
duplex
ces machines-là.
constructor
Ceux-là qui n'ont pas été
that
encore.
own these machines.
C'est le builder encore
Who's the builder
pour l'Uniplex.
for Uniplex?
Pomerleau. OK.
Roberto?
Ouais, blanc et noir. Pomerleau commandite les deux machines.
Je ne savais pas si c'était confirmé, c'est pour ça que je ne l'ai pas
I
mentionné.
don't know. It was confirmed.
Non,
That's
c'est
why
c'est
I
ça.
didn't
Oui,
say it.
non,
They put the
ben,
name on it, so
c'est
it must be
si c'est pas
confirmed.
confirmé au niveau de
If
la
it's not confirmed, we better
publicité, l'autre,
remove the sticker from
mettons,
and put
Lantaigne ou
Lantang's name or something like that.
OK, Madame Godbout.
Then we'll
J'ai
do.
peut-être, Monsieur Como, une question pour toi, mais
Mr.
pas vraiment
Como,
pour
question
Monsieur
for
Burke.
you, but maybe
La
more for
rénovation
Mr.
prévue
Burke.
pour
The
l'avenir. Il me
renovation
semble que quand il y
plan
a
for
des
next year,
rénovations qui nous
when
viennent
we have
d'urgence ou quand on
presentation
a
on
un
emergency
projet de
measures,
relance, il me semble que
when we have an
c'est quelque chose
emergency
qui, quand les
measures,
dossiers sont
it was
disponibles,
part
on
of
va
the
pouvoir les
infrastructure
faire plus
that are
d'urgence.
Mhm.
Est-ce qu'il y a une partie des
planned
rénovations
for
qui sont
emergency
utilisées
measures. Is there something
aussi
that was
pour
considered
la
here
réutilisation
that allow us
des
better
besoins
use
locaux?
in
Est-ce que
the
ça fait partie
economy
des
of the
rénovations qui vont
emergency
avoir
measures organization, or is there
Je
something
dirais
else
que
planned? I
non.
would say that no,
Ils vont servir de la même façon qu'ils sont prévus
it
d'être
would be
servis
served the same way that they are
on
being
finance les projets
used right now. For
d'amélioration de valeur
there's no
ajoutée puis
improvement
d'augmenter
of
les
added
services
value
qu'on
as
avait
far as the
prévus
service is
initialement.
concerned. With
Dès le
Uniplex,
début, on avait l'intention
at the
d'avoir
beginning, we
une
intended
génératrice pour
to
au cas
have a
d'urgence,
generator to
puis
operate the
l'éventuellement la
whole
servir pour différentes
building
purposes.
in
Mais
case of emergency to use the whole
ça
thing.
se
But
souvient bien, au-delà de 1,5
the
million,
cost was
et
over
ça a été
1.5 million.
retiré
One of the
du
elements that was
projet. Par contre, les
removed from the
espaces verts
project, but there are spaces
doivent être
planned
lorsque
at
ça
most of
viendra.
our buildings when it comes time.
Mais je pense que quand même, le fait
We'll
d'aller
do it. The
électrique
fact of
versus
going
faire
electrical compared to
des
propane,
utilisations, on sait,
it's a benefit
l'utilisation de
because
propane
we know the
va
use of
toujours
propane
créer
has already always
no pun
uh,
intended, des headaches.
Mais la question que j'ai, c'est
caused
est-ce
some
qu'on peut
headaches,
s'orienter en
no
disant
pun
que
intended.
les choix
But you
stratégiques
said
au niveau
you've
du
made
chauffage, par
strategic
exemple,
plan as far as the
est-ce qu'il y a
heating
des
is
choix
concerned,
stratégiques au niveau du
and we've
chauffage au
made
niveau de la rénovation?
heating for 1 year. But if we use something else, that's why I was wondering, did we take caution? Did we make decision where maybe we lost an opportunity that we could have used for something else? So that's where I was going at. Opportunity sometimes maybe we miss something else. I wonder if all of a sudden, whether it's where we don't heat.
Ça a une différente utilisation, ça serait peut-être pas une bonne idée de s'assurer qu'on chauffe plus là, s'il fallait qu'on utilise. C'était juste mon observation.
Merci. Monsieur Rideau.
Monsieur Berido,
Monsieur le maire.
thank you, Your Worship.
Je vais revenir sur
Monsieur Como, I want to come back
les panneaux
on the
solaires.
story of solar
Si je
panel.
comprends bien,
If
on
I
ne peut pas
understand
produire 60
correctly,
kilowatts
we can produce more than 100
pour le
kilowatt
nombre de panneaux
for the
que vous avez.
number of panels
Le
that is
gros
used.
de l'utilisation, la
The essence
consommation
of the
d'électricité, c'est
use, the
surtout l'été,
consumption of electricity is usually in the winter.
pendant l'été,
But during the summer,
il va continuer à produire de
our
l'électricité.
panels will
Le surplus,
produce
il va revenir
electricity, but the
à NB
surplus,
Power.
we have to
Est-ce
sell
que
it to
vous avez
NB
un
Power.
crédit pour ça
Do they give us a credit for that?
par rapport à l'hiver, la consommation qu'on
Uh,
va
the
utiliser?
consumption
Est-ce
that
que
we will
vous
use in the
avez un
winter,
crédit de ça,
do
vous
we
autres?
receive a
Comment
credit?
ça fonctionne, c'est ça, c'est
Yes, that's how it
l'utilisation
works.
pour
That's why the
la
maximum that you
différence.
can keep when you're hooked up.
Je sais pas si exactement
I
comment
don't
ça
know
fonctionne,
exactly
mais
how it
est-ce que
works,
c'est
but
quelque chose qui donne
yes,
des crédits ou entre guillemets
it's
illimité
kind of a
ou c'est
credit,
dur à redonner?
or
C'est
the
vraiment ce que
invoice for
les
the month is
professionnels
reduced
peuvent faire
by
avec
what
ces
you've
panneaux
given them, and that's
pour
how it
apporter
works.
une énergie lorsqu'il y a une
Share
réduction de
the
la
power when there's too
consommation d'eau,
much.
tu peux l'utiliser.
You can put it back to somebody else because in the summer, really,
AGL ne dépense probablement pas
AGL
moins,
does not
peut-être probablement une part
probably
d'électricité
spend
que
one
ce que vous avez.
quarter of the electricity
Je sais pas comment
that we use
l'estimation de
in the
dépenses,
winter,
comment c'est fait
but there's a basic
est-ce qu'il y a
consumption
un
that will be
surplus
close to what we use.
d'annualité
But if we have surplus,
avec beaucoup de soleil, par exemple,
we have a lot of
oui, donc
sun,
ceux
we have
là-bas qui ont la
energy
possibilité
as we can
d'effectivement
sell it, and we will have a credit during the year. Thank you.
Oui, Monsieur Lantin.
See you long thing.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Your worship.
J'ai pas mon nom sur la Zamboni, mais je suis fier
I
de
don't
l'avoir
have
mis
my
sur
name
mon nom sur
Zamboni,
les
but
sites.
I'm glad to have my name on one of the seats.
Oui, oui, oui.
Many of us,
Ma question
several
tient
of
d'abord
us.
au niveau des
My
panneaux solaires.
question has to do with solar panel.
Je suis certain que vous avez fait votre
I'm
étude
sure
sur ça,
that
là.
you've
Vous
made a
êtes des gens
study.
pour l'énergie renouvelable,
I'm in
tout ça.
favor of
Concernant
renewable
les panneaux solaires,
energy, but
quel
the
point
solar panel, okay,
efficace
to what
ou
extent efficiency
financièrement, comment ça peut être
and
viable?
financially, how can it be
Si on parle
viable?
de 600 000
And we talk about
pour
six
avoir
hundred thousand
255
dollars. We talk
panneaux
about
solaires,
two
ça peut
hundred
être installé sur
85
notre toiture.
solar
Oui,
panel. Will
c'est
it
ça,
be
c'est ça.
on the
On peut
roof?
aller voir
There's
pour
two
voir
options.
qu'est-ce qui est.
We'll go see,
Parce qu'il y a
look at the
différents types
market
de terrains. Il y a
because
des
there are
terrains sur
options
le bâtiment, mais selon
on the
selon
property. It's on the
la
building, but it
région,
evolves
ça va
so much.
dépendre
We
de
wait for an answer,
la
then we
région
call for a
aussi.
tender to
Parce que
see what is the
c'est
best
sûr
option.
qu'on peut mettre
It
ça
was studied. We can
sur des
put it on the
terrains
building,
qui pourraient être intéressants.
and there are
Donc,
spaces on the side that could be
si
interested.
on laisse
So
tout le bâtiment, ça pourrait nous
if
coûter
we leave on the
600 000.
side, it would
Si
cost
on laisse sur le
less.
bâtiment, il va coûter
So
très
it
structurel
would
aussi.
be, we should
Mais
put it on
est-ce
the
que ça peut
building
être
with
suffisant
structural.
pour
Is
faire
it
en
an
sorte qu'on ait une
investment to
ville
make
verte
such
ou
that
qui est
we would
vraiment
be
profitable
greener, or it's
financièrement?
really
Moi, je pense que
financially
les panneaux
profitable?
solaires, moi, je suis pas contre
The
non plus. Premièrement,
solar
si
panel,
vraiment
I'm not
c'était
convinced. If really
extraordinaire, il y en aura
it was
plus.
extraordinary, there would be a lot
Si
more
on n'en voit pas, puis il y a une
in
raison
town
pourquoi,
than
c'est parce
everywhere
que c'est
else
dispendieux versus le peu d'énergie que ça produit.
compared to the energy that it can produce.
La durée de vie, tu as dit c'était quoi, 25 ans?
You said it, that
Donc,
your duration
285
is what?
panneaux, je présume qu'il y a pas de
285
manutention. Ce que je
panels.
me pose la
There's
question, c'est de
maintenance.
voir
I
vraiment
just wonder to what
euh,
extent
financièrement que c'est viable.
financially
C'est-à-dire,
that is
vous avez
viable.
fait vos études, là?
Oui, la
You've
réponse est
made your
oui.
study, but
C'est la raison, Pierre, pour laquelle on n'a pas dans nos autres bâtiments présentement. On essaie de faire des
that's why we don't
économies
have
le plus
any other.
rentables.
We were
Par
trying to
exemple,
make the
là, dans nos
savings as
bâtiments
much as
qu'on
possible. We
achète,
change
c'est
the
uniquement des
lights
économies
and
vraiment moins efficaces.
some roofs
Parce
that
que
were less efficient. We made them more efficient. We
on a fait un
changed
projet avec
other
l'FCM
things.
il fallait
So that
atteindre
we
une
have a project
efficacité
with
de
the
30%.
FCM. We had to
Donc, nous,
reach
les panneaux
a
solaires,
ceiling of
ça
30%.
permet
The
d'avoir
solar
une
panel
efficacité qu'on avait besoin
would
d'avoir de
allow
10%
us to
d'énergie
reach
renouvelable.
that, and we'd have
Donc,
10%
si
of
on avait
renewable energy.
dans les cibles qu'il fallait atteindre
So it's all in the figures, in the target we had to reach.
c'est un bon temps de le faire vu qu'on avait des
It's a
subventions.
quick time to do it
Bref,
since
on
we
va essayer
had
des bâtiments avec.
time to do it.
Je suis d'accord que c'est peut-être pas
I agree that it
celui-là
may
qui a le meilleur
not be the one that
investissement, mais
we have the best return, but we thought it was a good opportunity to install it.
Oui, merci.
Thank you,
Merci, Monsieur Godet.
Mr. Godet,
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Pour les panneaux stationnaires,
for the
ça
panel.
rejoint ce que tu avais dit, c'était 6% à peu près pour AGL. Pas ça pour le
For the solar panels,
conseiller Brideau,
to come back to Councillor Brito's question,
ça lie à travers les
so
compteurs électriques.
the zero net
Ça
is
produit
on the electric meter, and if you produce a certain amount of electricity, it comes off your bill every month. Yes.
Des batteries, allez-vous mettre
Are there any batteries?
non, présentement, on a
No.
toujours l'utilisation. Parce qu'on a le net metering, on n'a pas besoin
We
de
have net metering, so we don't need batteries. It's a use that's pretty constant. So batteries bring down the energy. It's a return on investment on the batteries are very costly for what it gives off. And sometimes there's programs with NB Power, there are pilot projects. It's a new technology
on avait déjà été
and we
approché
could use them at certain points
éventuellement peut-être
in the building. Perhaps we'll have that option later, but for now we don't.
les batteries, j'avais pensé pour
So the batteries,
conseiller Godbout avait parlé
like Councillor Goodboo mentioned,
d'urgence,
in case of an emergency, batteries could be used
un backup.
as a backup.
beaucoup de batteries, par exemple.
Of course, it takes a lot of batteries
Grand espace.
because it's a large space.
Donc, c'est là que.
Section. Là,
Ouais.
merci.
Okay, thank you.
OK, on continue.
We shall continue. Mr.
On
Loteng,
peut pas ici.
thank you. I don't want to go on too much further, but with respect to the panels and the investment, have you calculated the return on the investment of the $600,000, the payback?
On investit 600 000 les panneaux
So
solaires.
we invest 600,000 on solar panels, and we have a return.
Oui, ben, c'est ça. C'est comme.
Mais juste les panneaux.
But the panels themselves, have you calculated that? Yes, I have the figures
Mais je l'ai pas.
in the file, but I can't remember
De
offhand.
mémoire, je dirais environ
It's about
25 années pour un. Mais là, faut que je prenne une
20, 25 years
Vraiment, c'est la
because it goes down like 15 years for the city. So, yes, we get grants for the city. So we continue.
parce que j'ai juste deux, trois thèmes. Donc, le restant pour le montant de.
For the rest, for next year, for renovations, it would be for the parking for the girls and boys clubs in Dieppe. It has to be repaved. Then we have energy improvements in other buildings. We received incentives for almost $17,000, and we're going to continue to reinvest in lighting or equipment in other buildings. So the total for renovations of 2022 are $2,680,000. And that includes a program with the FCM. And we mentioned earlier for the replacement program of buildings, we put into reserves money every year, and we're going to use at the Aquatic Center for the pool. And 2 years ago, we had the membrane for the pool, and this year we went with an expert firm who recommends to replace the membrane because it had holes and it's due to be replaced. So we hope to get that done next summer. It's $500,000. Thank you. Any other questions?
Madame Le Boutier.
Councillor Leboutier.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you, Your Worship. For the membrane, that has a life expectancy of how many years? About 10 years. So it's almost, or 11 years now. They don't last too long. Perhaps we could find something that would last longer. We have people working on that now. You know, they don't last very long. 10 years.
C'est la première fois qu'on remplace celle-là?
Pardon?
Est-ce que c'est la première fois qu'on remplace
Is
celle-là?
this the first time we replaced this one? Yes. In the past, we had replaced tiles on the side.
Oui, c'est la première fois qu'on remplacerait la membrane.
It's the first time that we will replace the membrane. Would it be possible? I don't know anything about pools, certainly in cities, but 500,000 every 10 years for a membrane, it's a lot of money. Have we considered other alternatives for pools? Some are made with other elements that could allow us to save in the long term and we would have the same quality. Perhaps you've done this already, but I would like us to take a look at that. There are other things to repair as well with the ladders and other items, but the membrane is about 80% of the cost. And we're contacting other communities to see what they do because our pool, there's a few of them in Canada. So we're working on that. Thank you.
C'est tout?
That's it.
Merci.
Thank you.
Alors, 1.2.
1.2 General Operating Fund Budget Finances. Stéphane Thériault.
Convaincu sera bien épaulé.
I'm convinced you will be well helped.
Et voilà.
Il va pas se faire automatique, on va l'arranger.
I'm fixing it. Okay.
Oh ben, bonsoir, monsieur le maire.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, colleagues,
Général qui nous écoute.
public that is listening to us right now.
On est rendu là. Au niveau du budget 2022.
With respect to the 2022 budget,
Toujours de misère avec ce mot-là. On va dire un petit résumé.
I have a small resume of where we're at up until now. On Monday, 18th of October, external committees came to visit us, came to present, and afterwards, on 25th of October, Steve Laundry presented budgets, capital budgets, and budgets for the next 4 years. And now we're on November 15th. We talked about the building renovations, and now we're going to talk about the general operating fund as well as sewers and water. So on November 22nd, at the next meeting next week, we'll get authorizations, and on December 13th, we'll transfer funds to reserves. That's at the last meeting of the year. With respect to revenues or new money that's came in for the general fund, the fiscal plate increased 13.3%. I'll speak a little bit about this. It's mostly residential that increased 16%, and commercial 7.8%. We have 65% residential and 65% commercial.
chiffre de 13,3%.
That's why we have 13.3%.
Au niveau des nouvelles constructions, ça représente
With respect to new construction,
donc est quand même un assez bon chiffre, donc un 3% juste en nouvelles
we
constructions.
have 3% in new construction and 10% is reevaluation that increased in the city, 10.5%. The table you see here is the government that published increases of tax basis of 12.75% in Dieppe. And I tell you 13.3%, and I'll explain. 13.3% is last year that we had a tax base of 3.3 billion, and this year we have 3.7 billion at 12.75%. After the budget was accepted last year, government came back in January, February, and announced they will give us a little bit more money. So canceled a gap, and I don't know why, but in the province, if we had a house of $300,000, the government might give you a reimbursement, but you have another tax on top of that. But the government canceled this plan, so all the evaluations, the residents and businesses don't have that anymore. So now we have $250,000 from the government. So they calculate 12.75%, and that's after they give us that amount. So that's why I have 13.3% because there's a bit of a difference there. The second amount is the financing grant. Last year we had 1.2 million. This year was reduced by $56,000, and it varies according to the tax base commercially. Last year we had a good tax base of 0.75%, and the 1% we received last year was residential and commercial, and residential had increased 4%, commercial reduced 4%. So now we're receiving a little bit less for this grant, and here it's $56,000. And now we have a grant of $1.1 million. So what do we propose this year? It's a reduction of 9 cents on the tax. It's 1.53, and last year it was 162. So it's a reduction of 9 cents. The good level of comfort and balance between what we need in the municipality to keep our services and improve them sometimes, and you'll see in the next presentations an improvement, and to keep the rate that will be stable over the next few years with our estimates of our tax base. So it's the maximum that we can go above it. We could have gone up to 10, but we would have needed an increase next year. So we're trying to have a good balance between the two.
Et comme de raison, ça va faire en sorte que le résident, lui, va pouvoir
The
bénéficier
homeowner will take advantage of
et économiser un peu sur
or
l'augmentation
will
de
save on the increase of the evaluation that is increased. I'll talk about that later. So we're talking about a reduction of 9 cents.
Justement pour le résident, justement cet
For
exemple que
the
j'ai pris ici,
homeowner,
euh, si on avait une maison
if we had a
qui est
house,
basée sur un fait réel ici, mais
it's not
qui avait une valeur de 350
real, but if you had a house worth $300,000 in 2021 and in 2022 the evaluation is 345,000,
de la population de
70%
Dieppe a reçu comme nouvelle
of the population in Dieppe received this news today. So an increase of 10%
par exemple, que
compared to the
la province
province
de Québec
where
a reçu
it's
une augmentation de plus de 10%.
less than 20% received an increase of 10%.
Dans la région ici,
So in the region here,
beaucoup.
the
D'ailleurs, la municipalité
evaluations are much higher and
a
probably
reçu
one of the highest municipalities for the tax base.
facture arrive 345 000.
So $345,000, and we don't get any details, but the increase was 15%. But the policy of the government for the houses that are owned by the same person, it's a maximum of 10% of evaluation that the government will give. So in this case, there's a reduction of 5% that'll bring it down to 10%. If the owner, or if it's the second owner and it was bought 300,000 last year and it was worth 345,000 this year, there won't be any reduction, but the existing proprietor will benefit from this. So now it's um, a home will be valued at $330,000 with the adjustment of the taxes, and the bill will increase of more than $4,000 to more than $5,000 in 2022. $192, which is an increase of 4%. So the reduction of 9 cents, what has it done for this owner? It's reduced his bill $300,000. So it's not 500,000 as it could have been because it comes out of this 9 cents of rebate. So the increase of 15% in this example is an increase of 4% for the owner of the house. It's what he has to take out of his own pocket. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. If you look at sources of funds for the 2022 budget, an increase of $3.4 billion. Last year was 59.7 million, and this year it's $63.1 million. So this is the property tax that makes up the difference. Let's say we had not reduced this 9 cents, it would have been over 1 million that would come into the municipality. But this reduction, it's $3.3 million that we could have received, so to come to 3.8 million that we receive from property taxes. With grants, we have a reduction of 56,000. And for $350,000, for example, at the Aquatic Center, there was a reduction, and with the COVID and all the rules, we cannot attain the same level, so reduce the budget $100,000. The other big portion are the surplus of the former year. So 2 years ago, we had a surplus in the budget this year for 300,000, and last year's budget from 3 years ago was 600,000. So we're going to a surplus of 600,000 to 300,000. So there's a surplus, but it doesn't touch our budget because what do we do with that money? That is with respect to expenses. I'm going to explain to you a summary of what has happened from one year to another with respect to budgets. From the budget 2021, 59.7 million, and today we have a $63.1 million budget. I'm trying to establish a basic budget, which is what we need as a minimum to keep the same services from one year to another. We had an exercise a couple of years ago. We came to council and established the level of services, budgets that were necessary for all the services in the city. Some expenses were more or less flexible. So that number, I'll calculate it. I take out the transfer from reserves. It's an amount that goes back year after year, but I don't use it to finance the budget, so I remove it. And I take out some expenses, one-time shots from 2021. Sometimes it can happen the next year. So I have a basic budget of 58.3 million. Then I have four types of expenses: transfers to reserve, 500,000, and then the next, I'll explain them, and you'll see more details later. The one shot deals at for 2022, 500,000. What's new for 2022, 1.3 million, and existing expenses of 2.5 million. We're talking about expenses that increase, but the services don't increase, like salaries, etc. And I'll give you more details later. With respect to transfers to reserve, you can see we had 600,000 last year, which was surplus of 2 years previous. That was in the budget and we're transferred to reserve. In 2022, we have $500,000. We have 300,000 from the surplus of former years, and we propose tonight a surplus of about 150,000. It's more than what we need for revenues and expenses, so we're transferring it to capital reserve. For expenses that are one shot for $500,000, all those expenses that we are going to transfer to reserve on December 13th. If there's money in the budget that will transfer to reserve to use next year to finance these one-time expenses. With information technology, we have 24,000 for S3 software, which is new. And we have cameras. We have 7 intersections. We used to be able to go look at them live, but with technology, we don't have that anymore. If you go on the website, they're not there. So we want to bring back this service that was used. People did some research on Dieppe.ca and it'll help with small removal. And population likes to look at that as well. So that's about $14,000 to fix that. I think it's a good investment. There's 150,000 that we want for the plan, recreation plan. So we're starting to look at that in our budget to work on that for leisure and sports. $125,000 for communications. We had that expense last year in 2021. We had 100,000 for signs downtown, and we had 100,000 for the website. However, in downtown, there was a lot of construction, so we didn't do anything there. So that 100,000 from last year, we're going to put it in reserve and take it out again next year. And this on the website, there's a lot more work. There's about $25,000 of work to do again this year, and we took $100,000 last year. 70,000 for engineering. This is the program that we had last year for 50,000 a year, and in 2021 we did not use it, so we're going to put that $50,000 in reserve, so we'll have 100,000 that we can use next year. 50,000 in reserve plus 50,000 in the budget, and then we'll be able to do major repairs on an overpass for $100,000. So it's a one-time shot of $50,000. So rather than this year, it'll be next year. The other 20,000 is for the streets. We mentioned that at one meeting. We do it every 3 years to figure out the state of the streets and to see what repairs have to be done. And that's necessary, and it will direct where we put funds for the next few years. We put a lot of money in the preservation of asphalt, so we want to have the right amount at the right time. And 30,000 one-time shot for consultation. So here is human resources. We didn't do everything last year. It wasn't done in 2021, so we have to transfer to reserve to use it in 2022. And for Projeunesse to help them with their strategic plan, it's the first time we do that, and that's $10,000. With sports fields, we have $85,000. We're talking about soccer fields, Sabri soccer. It wasn't done in 2021. And signage and trails, we want to improve that. And we want a bridge at the Rotary Park for cyclists. And it's going to come back to council to see what it will be proposed. So we have it in budget just in case. And then we'll see when it comes back before council. Lastly, $30,000 for planning for the Solvay project, and then the river park as well. So we'll see what we want to do for next year in 2022 and the river park.
c'est tout financé par
What I'm
les étudiants
presenting that
et
should
les
happen
nouvelles embauches.
once. So it's new money.
Et des
Excuse me.
questions à la...
Any question?
Non? Alors, on continue.
Okay, let's go on.
Donc là, maintenant, on est rendu aux nouvelles dépenses
Now we're at
numériques.
the new expenses.
Pour ceux-là, je demanderai
For these,
si M. Bourque,
I
notre
would ask Mr. Burke,
direction de ce côté-là,
the
afin de nous
leader,
expliquer
the
les
head,
quatre premiers
to
sur la
explain
liste,
the
s'il vous plaît.
first four on the list. Mr. Burke.
C'est bon.
Shubuk,
Merci.
thank you.
Alors, le premier poste
So the
présentement
first
qui est
position that is proposed for cleaning that
les
was
besoins de
identified
personnel additionnel lorsqu'on a ouvert.
the needs of additional
C'est
staff when we opened
la
the Plex
rénovation
was
2 ans
part
pour
of
l'Uniplex, pour
for two
l'entretien.
years to
Et
for
ce
the maintenance,
poste-là,
and that
présenté comme
position
dépense
was
numérique,
presented
mais pas
last
dans
year in the budget,
2022.
but for
Et
21-22.
pour
So
cette
it's still part
raison,
of the budget for
c'est
that reason.
un poste qu'on avait
So it's a
présenté
position that we talk about
repoussé pour
last year,
2022. C'est pourquoi
but for 2022,
euh,
it's still there.
les
It
deux
didn't move.
attendés renseignements
The two attendants
qui
to
restent à combler les emplois
information
Uniplex.
students at
On a
Uniplex,
évalué la
we
dernière année
evaluated
on
the last
est en
year,
pleine
and we're not
opération, si vous voulez,
in
avec
full
le COVID.
operation, if you
Ça a
wish.
commencé tranquillement,
With
pas vite à la
COVID, it
maison.
started slowly, and now it's
Et
running
ça,
better. So what we did,
on avait un projet pilote de
we
février
had a pilot project from February to
pour
July
évaluer les
to
besoins et
really
avoir quelqu'un à
assess
l'accueil
the
pour le
needs to
moment.
have someone at the
Et
reception for the
on a
time
la
being.
conclusion
And we came to
que
the
ça fallait
conclusion
quelqu'un maintenant,
that we
que
need
ça
someone
s'améliorait
now.
beaucoup par
We
rapport
knew it
au
would come
COVID.
sooner or later that we
Au
would
niveau
need.
de l'Uniplex,
But
les gens
as for the
sont
Uniplex,
l'organisation,
the
c'est
people,
plus
especially
c'est un
with the use,
complexe.
it's more than an arena. It's a complex, a community center
Les
with
salles de réunion,
all the
les
meeting
bibliothèques,
rooms,
la
the
salle,
gym, the
les
nursery,
amphitheaters,
and the
l'utilisation
community
des gens
kitchen. The
fait
whole
en sorte
use
que
of the center
les
make
gens
it such
s'informent beaucoup
that people inquire a
des
lot
services qu'on a
about the
et des
services that we
facilités
have
qui
to offer, and also
disponibles. Mais
we
par
need
contre
someone to
aussi,
direct people, and we
il y a une
also
personne
have a
qui s'occupe de
need.
la
We have
réservation
a
des
person
installations.
who is
Et ça
responsible for the
permet
reservation
de faire
of
des,
the
des liens
locations.
chiffres
In
plus
spite of COVID, the
avancés comme
last
ça. Mais
few years,
on a eu une augmentation d'environ
we've had an
55%
increase
de
of
demandes
55% of
de
requests
réservation
for
que ce
reservation
soit pour
and for use of
des
whether it's
hôtels,
for
des centres de
sports property
rénovation,
were in great
que
demand
ce
last
soit
year,
aussi
whether
pour
it
d'autres
be
arénas, parce que
also for the arenas,
Stephen
because
mentionne qu'on
Stefan
diminue un peu aux
mentions that
centres aquatiques les revenus,
at
mais
the
c'est parce que
Aquatic Center,
l'utilisation est un peu moindre malheureusement
the
pour cette année.
incomes are less, but we've reached the
Donc,
objective. The arenas are
ça fait
being used very
une
much,
grosse charge qui s'est faite
and
ça vient
it's
avec
had
55%
a big
d'augmentation
load on these
qui
people,
malheureusement, c'est
55%
pas qu'on répond à tous
increase
les
on
coups
the demand every time we
réserver
answer
des
the phone
installations-là.
to reserve
Ça
these
fait beaucoup.
installations.
Et
That person at present time is
cette
located
personne-là,
at the
avec le support
Uniplex.
des
That
gens
person, with the
qui
support of
proposent
the people at the reception
vraiment
that we are
bien cette
proposing,
personne-là avec
can
ses
help
tâches.
the other
Et
person
aussi,
with that task.
tout comme on le fait
And
au centre aquatique,
just like
vous
we're
avez
doing it at the Aquatic
besoin
Center,
d'accéder
and the
à
volume is quite
des
high at
abonnements
the Uniplex, and
on
people are
paye
asking for
certaines
it. Can we
utilisations
pay
des glaces.
our
Je
ice
laisse croire certains
use
centres de loisirs
invoice?
font
Can we
certaines
register to recreation
concessions
activities like we do
pour
it
donner
at the
l'intention de faire
Aquatic
l'activité.
Center? It would be our
Euh,
intentions to do exactly
Ça
that.
vient vraiment
So
aider
it
à
really
maximiser
comes to
l'utilisation de
help
vos
to
installations.
maximize the use of our
La question
installation. Now, the question
des inscriptions, il y a aussi le
of the
problème des bus
registration and also the bus
qu'on veut mettre
passes,
en place
that is something that we want to implement from
relativement
the
difficile,
Uniplex.
comme on l'a répété.
And I'm
On
not don't want
réalise
to
que
repeat myself, but we
avec
realize that the
les besoins
volume
est
and the
venu
need
beaucoup plus rapidement.
is
On n'avait pas vraiment
can be
comme tel,
had
c'était
much
vraiment
quicker.
d'analyser l'uniplex et de voir
We
à quel
wanted
moment on
to
avait besoin
watch Uniplex and see when the
et nous,
need
on le recommande
would
pour l'an
be
prochain
there,
deux
and we
personnes
recommend for next year
avec aussi
two per
quelques heures
week
étudiantes dans la
with
semaine
a
pour
few
combler
students on the weekend
ces choses-là pour
to fill in for the
que ce
holidays
soit
and have somebody during the day and at night The last element is
des
the
critères
walking trail.
d'intégration d'utilisation des services.
75% of the
Ça veut dire
usage is during the day.
le soir,
So
l'après-midi,
it's used
ça
at
peut
night on the
passer
weekend, but
pendant
during the
24 heures,
week,
c'est là que
between 8 and
plus
2
important.
o'clock, that's
Il y a un
where
contrôle en place
it's used the most.
gestion de
And
l'eau
we have control for the use
ces
of the walking
contrôles-là
trail.
sont beaucoup plus
These
importants le
controls
soir,
are more useful for us at nights and on weekends,
qui est là aussi
but
toujours en contrôle
that
en train de
it's
vérifier
there during the day.
cette partie-là
And
aussi
we are planning
se
about
rend à
that
des
part because we
aprentissages
don't
sur la
want
marche
the
aussi
trail
pour
to
pour
become
ceux qui pour la marche,
a
l'approche
loafing area.
intentionnelle.
But
Alors ça, c'est les deux préposés à
these
l'accueil
are
qui
the
rentrent
two
au bureau de
attendants
réception.
to reception.
Deux postes
And
qu'on
then we have
propose
two
au
positions
Centre
that we
aquatique.
are proposing for the
Le Centre
Aquatic Center.
aquatique, les
The
défis
Aquatic
qu'on
Center, the
s'envoie,
challenge that we have with the
c'est
Aquatic Center
d'avoir des sauveteurs
has
qui
to
vont
do
venir
with having
suivre
lifeguards.
les dernières années
In the last
diminuer
few
le
years,
nombre de
we
personnes
had to
dans
reduce
la
the
mer
number of persons that we
pour
can allow to come in for
diminuer
public
le manque de sauveteurs.
bidding because we have a lack of lifeguards at the
Les
Aquatic
postes
Center. And we have
temps
two
plein
positions that are not full time.
l'hiver
They're auxiliary position,
prolongent
40 weeks per year, so many for per weeks, and we can't fill a full time when we have a commitment. We have people to meet the requirements.
Un des défis aussi
And one challenge also
au niveau du centre aquatique,
with the
c'est le
Aquatic
nombre
Center
d'employés.
has to do with the
Actuellement,
Red
si les
Cross
employés
standards.
sont là,
As soon
on
as we
passe
have
par
one
un
person in the
staff
water, no matter
gratuitement
of
pour les autres. Alors, lorsque
the
c'est
level
c'est
of that
possible
person, we need two
de
lifeguards. That's
décider
for the
si c'est
first
un
16. But as soon as you
staff
have 17 when you
uniquement
need four
à
lifeguards.
partir de
It's not always obvious to go get our young
étudiants
people, students who work in the
et
aquatic center.
ça fait que ça
And
nous apporte
so
une certaine stabilité
it brings us a
de
certain
plus
stability by
maintenant
having two
qu'on a
full-time
une coordonnatrice
persons.
au niveau
We have a
des
coordinator for
activités
the
et
aquatic
ça nous donne un
activities, but it
deuxième et
would
un troisième
bring us a
personne
second and a
pour
third
assurer ces
person
services-là.
to assure,
Le
to
centre
guarantee
de
these
sauvetage
services.
n'a
Uh,
pas le choix.
Lifeguard
En
and
incrémentant
aquatic
chaque
center
jour
go together. We've
des
identified
sauveteurs
a
supplémentaires,
larger number of lifeguards for the future, but we are convinced that
on doit commencer
two
parce qu'on doit
is
aussi
where we have
renforcer
to start because we have to rebuild
la force de main-d'œuvre
our
humaine
strength,
pour
our manpower of
l'organisation des
young
équipes
people for swimming because
contribuer à
it's a
tous les efforts
cycle that continues
qui augmentent le niveau de performance
as
de
they
chaque
increase
jour
the level and
du rattrapage
they become, we have
demande
catching up to do,
des sauveteurs
but we
et
recommend to
ça fonctionne en
hire
fonction de niveau
immediately two
de jour
lifeguards, and
des
it's
employés.
a fulfillment of the two, part
Puis le
time
défi que je vais
will
expliquer,
become
c'est
permanent. The last
l'intervention
one
multimoteur.
is the mechanic,
C'est
small
des opérations
little motor
qu'on a
mechanic
la dernière
at the
année
operations of the
eu
last year.
l'opportunité
We've had the
d'avoir
opportunity to
d'ateliers de
really
formateurs
put our
de par le fait qu'on a un employé
in
qui est
operation
certifié
the
pour faire
fact
du
that we have an
sauvetage
employee who is
certifié
qualified, but he works
et
elsewhere
lui, en raison de la
with
COVID,
reduced
a
hours
réalisé
and the COVID to maximize the
ses
talents or
formations pour ouvrir les petits moteurs.
his training
On va
for
voir
small motors.
l'écran ici, là,
I'll share
ça fait
my
qu'au
screen
niveau
just
de
a sec.
l'inventaire des petits moteurs
That's
et
for
des
the
moteurs,
inventory of small engine. We talk
la
about
flotte
everything except the
des
mobile
moteurs,
fleet.
des
We
ponduses,
talk whether it's a
pompage,
lawnmower, pumping station,
typiquement des
small
systèmes
equipment,
d'incendie, effet de serre.
fire
Il y a beaucoup de choses
installation.
qu'on
There's a
doit
lot of these
utiliser
things
là-dedans.
we have
On
to
a fait un
go to
calcul
the
en
private
profondeur
sector,
au
and
cours de
we've
la
made
dernière année.
calculation with the number of
À
hours
l'interne,
we've had
on a pu permettre aux
internally where we
personnes
were able
des
to
différents
allow a
secteurs de
person
faire le travail
to go from one
à
sector
hauteur
to
de
do the
700
job.
heures de réparation
We did
sur le
over
marché.
700 hours of repair,
Parce que
where on the market
un
it
investissement
would
de
have cost us,
700 heures,
they charge between 90 to
on calcule
$100 an hour. We
255 à 300
calculate
000
about
de
55 to
frais
$60,000 in
d'électricité.
expenses
Mais
uh,
au niveau des petits
outside.
moteurs, l'avantage qu'on
But
a,
the
c'est que
small
si on
engine,
a
the
une bonne main-d'œuvre
advantage we have by having a good preventive
les dernières
maintenance,
années qu'on
we
a
noticed in
vendu
the
des
last few
lawnmowers
years
ensemble,
that our lawnmower, we sold
les
them
gens les
at
utilisaient pour
auction.
encore
People
pour
would
la
buy it
saison.
and would
Ça fait que si
operate it for another 5 years. We take care of it. We think we could
on a
probably
plus de choses à
uh,
faire.
do more internally, and that position would be part of the team of municipal fleet, the team of mechanics. He would not be a mechanic of heavy equipment, but small motors, small engines. But that person can help for certain things, for mechanic or where we have needs as far as that goes. So that summarizes somewhat the position. Stefan,
S'il y a des questions.
I don't know if you have questions. Any questions from the councillors?
Monsieur Lantin.
Should not think.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Your worship,
Juste une question. Le
just
projet
one question.
hôtel Arena Centenaire,
The project we have the Century Arena, the Centennial, sorry. We've had different options, but is that the budget of implementation of the recreational plan? Is the famous pickleball property, would it be in the $150,000? Well, we wait for the presentation. That's one of the first step that is coming in the next few weeks. And the other one is in the capital projects that we've identified an annual amount, 1 million per year for 10 years. That is for the implementation of some actions. So we did not identify what, but we're waiting for the report. Thank you,
Oui, merci.
Mr. Boutier. Thank you, Worship.
C'était pour Monsieur Burke, ma question.
Was for Mr. Burke.
Point de vue de lorsque vous avez parlé d'une augmentation
When you
des
talk about
réservations, etc.,
an
pour le centre
increase for
d'activité,
the reservation,
est-ce que
55%,
au niveau du budget,
our new website,
va nous permettre
will it
justement
allow
une
us
amélioration dans la technologie?
a big improvement in the technology? Will we be able finally to
Avoir un
purchase
système en ligne
uh,
savoir tout le temps quelle
and
chose
online? We
est
don't
efficace
necessarily
dans la
have
technologie?
someone to be efficient.
J'aimerais pouvoir dire oui.
I would like to be able to say yes, but
Toujours le logiciel
we
TI,
have
service TI qu'on
a
travaille
software with the
améliorer puis
IT
éventuellement
that we
remplacer.
want to improve and
Aura
eventually
sûrement
replace it.
d'autres
It will
d'autres opportunités
give
dans le
us
futur, mais on n'est pas
more
encore
opportunities in the future, but we're
dans la
not there
position
yet. So,
d'évaluer tout ça. Puis comme le
as I
député
say, that's why I'd like to say yes, but we're not there
croit
yet.
que même
I
lorsqu'on ne sera
believe
pas là,
that even when we get
nos
there,
interventions,
your
nos personnes de
reservation,
chambre
well, we have a
vouloir
person,
se renseigner, demander de
the
l'information.
people will want to inform themselves to ask questions to, but technologically speaking, we will get there one day, but we're not quite there yet.
Je dirais que c'est probablement
I would say that it's
la
probably
plainte numéro un que moi
the
j'entends
number one complaint that I
des
hear
utilisateurs, c'est
from the users is
l'inabilité
the
d'être efficace quand ils veulent
impossibility of being
choisir.
efficient when
Donc,
they want to choose something.
je ne sais pas si vous comprenez le
I
message.
don't know if you understand the message, but
Autant que ça bouge.
it's time
Si vous permettez,
that it moves. Your worship,
la
if I
question que
may,
j'avais, c'est sur l'achat d'un
we
logiciel
had
qui
the
permet
interest to buy
la
a
réservation en ligne
software that
pour
would
plus
allow reservation online.
de capacité.
As if, as
C'est
far
une
as
question
capacity, when
d'utilisation
we made the proposal, it's the
de
whole
logiciels
question
bilingues.
of
Quels
bilingual
étaient les
French
coûts?
and English that was a
Alors,
challenge.
on a quand même
So
fait un choix qui
we
se
had a
rapportait
choice that
aux recommandations, mais
that was recommended,
pour rentrer nos besoins.
but
Alors, c'est
it
là
would
que
not meet our needs. That's
on
where
continue à travailler avec
we
le
hit a
logiciel.
wall, but we kept
Répondre
working
aux
with
standards à l'extérieur.
what could meet our
C'est ce
standard,
qu'on dit au niveau
except
de la
that.
réflexion.
So it's being
C'est une
under
demande de
reflection.
quel
That's
type?
a big challenge. Do we have a date,
Monsieur Daigle, qui est
Monsieur Dag,
notre centrale de technologie en
who
arrière,
is our
a la réponse tout de suite.
technological central? He
Permettez-moi
has the answer. I don't know if he's allowed to come and clarify that here.
Bonsoir.
Good
Bonsoir.
evening.
La question.
Thank you for the question.
Justement, on entend faire une mise à
Well,
jour.
we are
Attendez un moment, s'il vous plaît. Une mise à jour du système en ce moment. Les
an update of the system. Some testing is being done
un test
right now,
qui se fait par
and there is a test that is
fabricant,
done by the
développeur de
manufacturer.
logiciels ici
Those who build,
semaine prochaine, jeudi.
uh,
Fait qu'on va éliminer la salle
it's
d'attente.
being
Il
done
va y
next
rester une
Thursday.
salle d'attente
There's been a lot of frustration for the waiting room, and people complain. So we hope to remove the problem. All of that, see, presently some work are being done. The whole thing will be implemented, and we hope to be ready for January for the next huge registration with swimming. As for the reservation, I'm told that a few weeks ago, I don't know where they're at, but they would make that available with the present platform. So there's still work to be done, but I know it's coming, and we'll keep you
Merci beaucoup.
informed. Thank you,
C'est possible. Monsieur Bourque, point de vue
Monsieur Bird. I want to
sur
clarify
les deux sauveteurs qu'on va ajouter,
the
ça
two
va être
lifeguard that
exclusivement
we will
de
add
notre
will
côté
allow us to
de
increase
service à nos citoyens
the
en
service
plus
to
grand
our
nombre
citizen with a
et probablement
greater
plus
number.
efficacement.
Ça
Is
donne une
that it?
stabilité aussi au
It
niveau des
brings a
personnels.
stability to the lifeguard to be able to accept more people in the swimming pool. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you.
OK, on continue.
Let's continue. Let's
Merci,
go on.
M. Bourque.
Thank you,
Donc,
Monsieur.
le prochain poste ici, on parle du chef
Next
de projet.
position, we talk about
C'est-à-dire celui-là est déjà en poste.
the
Il a
chief.
été
He's
recruté en
already there.
2021.
It's a
Cependant, cette position
2021
est
position, but it was
une place
financed
vacante qui a été créée
by a
avec
vacant
une personne
position
qui n'avait pas été
that
remplacée.
was
Donc, cette personne-ci
made
ici
with
a
the
remplacé le chef de projet
fire
en
chief.
2021.
We were
Et
able
en
to
2022, parce que c'est difficile
uh,
à remplir le poste,
replace,
c'est
since we want to
donc
to replace the fire chief. The second
c'est
one,
un corps
uh,
de plus à notre budget. Donc, c'est un poste
one
aussi
more
qui
position
a été
in our
remplacé par
budget, and
la
that is
sous-préfète.
caused by the head
Et on se réserve aussi
Muncho
un
from
budget
last year.
à
And we
réorganisation,
keep
une
ourselves a
restructuration
budget
au niveau
for
des
a
bureaux
restructuring
administratifs, l'administration.
that will be at the administration level.
Les autres dépenses maintenant, on vient de
The other
discuter un
expenses,
million
well, we
d'euros
just talked
par
about
des frais de
1.1
poste
million
pour
that were
atteindre les
caused by new
300 000
position.
pour
There's
2021.
300,000 to reach a
Finalement, on
1.4
vient d'un
million.
montant de
The first
80 000
amount
qui est le
was
fonds
80,000. That is the grant
Centre des arts de la culture de Dieppe.
for the Art and Culture Center. I had the Aquatic Center, but it's not. It's
Centre
not
des arts et de la culture de
the
Dieppe.
Art and Culture Center of the app, and that one is to help them to hire an art director. That should
50 000
happen. That's
pour la
$50,000 for a program that we
sécurité.
want to start. This
Et
is
au
brand
niveau des
new.
lumières et des
A
pavés,
program for the
pour le
lights
soir, surtout à
and
cette période de l'année,
pedestrian crossing.
c'est assez sombre
At this time of the
avec
year, at night, it's
manque de
quite
sécurité.
somber. It's quite dark, and we want to
C'est sûr que
uh, improve this with
avec un investissement
50,000. We won't cover all the crossing
mais au moins
at once, but at least if we can do two or three each year for the next few years,
40 000
$40,000 is being proposed for the control of dogs. That's a new program.
plusieurs personnes
It would be
encore
done by a
allégerait le
contract
fardeau à nos
with a third
agents
person that would
qui travaillent peut-être qui sont
relieve
vraiment
our
satisfaits
officers. Well,
de ce
we
côté-là.
talk
Et
about
aussi, on
helping
nous
them
offre
to have
une subvention
longer
aussi
hours of
on
service.
offre
So it would be 24 hours to take care
45
of
000
the dogs. We have
pour les uniformes.
45,000
Donc,
with
pour
the
un plan stratégique,
information
le programme devrait
tools
couvrir
as
notre
much for
subvention
the
totale
doctor,
de
the
15
directors, as for you counselors.
live.
We want to have something that would be
Donc,
more
c'est pas
live,
réel
if I may
parce
use
que
it,
quand on parle, donc c'est vraiment un outil
by
pour
opposition.
un
Well,
plan
it's a
stratégique
tool
dans
to
une
facilitate what the strategic
organisation
plan is offering, how we can
ou afin de créer des
present
subventions
report or
et aussi au niveau du
how we can,
logiciel
and
software.
also a translation
20 000
software,
pour assurer
$20,000 for
s'assurer
programming at
que
Uniplex.
ça
It's
évolue
mostly to
beaucoup pour faire
improve
plus d'améliorations sur le terrain.
more programming
Et on
at
termine
the
sur
nursery.
10 000
And I have
10 000
$10,000, not
mais
much, but
parce que ça va
I
évoluer
indicate it because
avec
it
les
will grow
activités
next
qui
year.
sont au
We
commencement du
gave
projet
ourselves, or we set a budget,
ou
an operational
les
budget
activités qui s'en viennent
for the synthetic
avoir lieu. Puis
ground
évidemment des
that
déficits
we
qui
are
vont
talking about. If we talk about electricity for the last months of the year next year, we'll have an amount that is slightly greater than $50,000. Now,
qui a augmenté, c'est-à-dire
the
les dépenses
expenses,
existantes. Toutes
the
les
existing
dépenses de
expenses
gestion
that have gone up.
de
Oh, a question from Mr. Thibodeau. Thank you, Worship.
Le logiciel de traduction,
Translation software.
pour quelle raison qu'on a besoin d'un logiciel de
Why do
traduction?
we need a software, a translation
là, vous
software?
aurez besoin d'aide pour répondre à celle-là.
I will need help
On va
to
vérifier
answer that one. I don't know if Sean could answer me.
en communication qui devrait nous écouter ce soir.
Someone from communication should be with us tonight.
Ce logiciel de traduction,
We know the
c'est
translation
bien, c'est difficile
software
à comprendre.
is hard to understand.
C'est vraiment difficile à comprendre, alors je comprends
It's
pas.
really hard to understand. I don't know why we would purchase something like that.
Monsieur Dex, on vient.
Monsieur Dag is coming,
Peut-être pour accélérer la chose quand même. Là,
maybe
ça semble
to
pas.
accelerate the thing, and maybe there's some benefit to it.
C'est plus difficile à les établir.
Alors, bonsoir.
Good evening once again.
Malheureusement, je pense que c'est une
In
faute
fact,
dans la
I think
présentation.
it's
C'était pas
an error in the
le logiciel
presentation. It was not a
la
software
raison du coût
for
d'accéder
translation.
à des services.
Is the increase of cost of translation.
Ça tombe sur TI, mais je pense que ça aurait dû être dans un autre.
It should have been somewhere else. Am I wrong, Stefan?
Je comprends. D'accord.
Il n'y a pas de logiciel de traduction. Là,
There's no software added. We already have one.
je pense que c'est peut-être ça. Là.
Maybe that's what it is.
Parfait, merci.
Thank you.
Il vient juste de buster ma bubble. J'ai une erreur de ma présentation.
I have a mistake in my presentation. You just busted my
J'avais mal traduit
balloon.
l'information.
I probably didn't translate properly my
Donc,
information.
c'est ça.
So
Nous,
that's it.
la traduction, justement, qui est offerte
The translation that's being offered with the services that we've planned for next year.
au niveau. Oh, c'est ça.
That's it.
Positivement.
Oh, I'm done with that slide.
Donc, au niveau des dépenses, comme je disais
So
tantôt,
as for the expenses, as I was
qui sont
saying,
existantes, qui n'offrent pas
that
un
exist
meilleur
now
service, c'est juste
that
qu'il
don't
y a
have a better level of
des
service, we have to look at the
dépenses qui sont
service,
plus
the
chères,
level that we have now, the services we have to pay more.
et
Now,
c'est une
salary wise,
estimation.
this is an estimate.
Encore
We
une
don't
fois,
have the figure yet,
avec un
but
budget de près de
with a
20
budget
millions
of close to $20 million
au niveau du budget,
for the salary, the general operation,
400 000
we have
pour les
400,000 that could be a salary increase
etc.
related to the cost of living and
On a
whatnot.
1,1 million de
1.1
commission
million
extérieure
for
un peu plus loin.
external commission. I'll have more details later on because I have a slide
Mais
on outside the
RC,
commission, but the RCMP is item number one with the increase of close to $800,000 with the salary only and 300,000 to solve the problem they have with the South. That's what makes 1.1 million. Other outside commissions, some are increasing, some are going down. I'll show it in later on.
Les trois prochains, je les ai encadrés
The
en
next
bleu
three
parce que c'est un bloc
are in
et ces
red
trois prochains ensemble.
because it's a block that belong together.
Parce que c'est
It's
présentement sur
a
le plan
group of
financier.
expenses that
Si vous me
belong together.
le plan
If you
financier,
remember, the
35%
financial,
est
I have
réservé
35% of
pour
the
ces
budget
trois
that is
items.
reserved for these three items
Donc,
here.
le 400 000
So the
rénovation
400,000
et
with the
1,1 million
operation,
pour le
1.1 million
remplacement et
replacement program, and
réduction de la dette.
820,000 for the reduction of the
Le
debt.
total de ces trois
But the total of these
le
three,
budget de fonctionnement
the
demeure
operation
à
budget
5%.
must remain at 25%. It
Deux,
means two things.
service à la dette.
Service to the debt, it reduced by 820,000, but that 820,000 is not being used for the other expenses to finance the other expenses that we have in the budget. So it remains in that square. So the replacement of the assets just benefited from $800,000 more. And because the budget in general have increased by 3 or 4 million, well, 25% of 3.4 is found in this group. So finally, I have 200, $700,000 more. I don't have the proper amount. Yes, the first of 1.5 million and 800, so 700,000 more that will go in that square to answer the policy that we've implemented for that purpose. And to give you some information about the debt, it's a loan of $8 million that we made in 2016 for 15 years. At that time, the 8 million, we made 5 million. We borrowed for Dieppe Boulevard at that time. So 1.1 million was for the total sale and the purchase of property at the operation center. So we had a $500,000. I can't even understand my own reading. The Dover Park. We invested at the Dover, where you have a soccer park. Another 500,000 for the improvement. Oh, I have to read better. I can't understand my reading. I can't read my own reading. Oh, the fire department on Gauvin. We made some improvement to have the 911 service. So it gives you an idea. The $8 million that we borrowed in 2016, there's $800,000 more in the service of the debt. That 800,000 will reduce the ratio of the debt directly, accompanied by the increase of the budget, make it that the debt limit will go from 13% to 11% for 2022. So it's a reduction of 2% right there. So it's a big impact. It was in 206. I was saying 216. Yeah, 2006, over 15 years. Next item, $50,000 increase. So it's the cost that represents, if you wish, the use of the water by the firemen. They use the water. The firemen, the budget of water and sewer has to pay Moncton, so the general operation can transfer money to the water and storage. And in that case, we go to 2.1 million, but it's an increase of 50,000. There is a regulation that exists at the province level, provincial level. There is a limit amount. There's a percentage that we can send general to water and storage, and we're under that percentage right now. So there's no problem really as far as that goes. As for the snow removal, there's $100,000 increase. I think that the contract has come to the council already, two contracts, and there's a smaller amount downtown. Downtown, we are the parking that we are doing. So it required an additional budget that gave us $100,000 more for snow removal. There's $60,000 for information technology, and we'll work on this next year. This will improve the service and Zoom. Well, I think it's here to stay for a while. So we need, maintenance expenses, $65,000 for the faculty maintenance, and now we talk about the operation cost everywhere in the city. 15,000 here for the town, and we talk about $20,000. Wait, as for the waterfall, these are all small amounts here and there that add to 85,000, 65,000. Sorry, but it's on a budget of $2 million budget, so 65,000. It's quite small, increase wise that is being required. There's $85,000 for the uh, property tax. This is something that has to send to the province to make an evaluation in the municipality. It's a fixed cost. It's 0.194. It's 1 cent 94. It's almost 2 cents. So when the resident receive the invoice for property tax, there's 2 cents that goes for that payment, and that we have to send back to the province. It represents $725,000. That is an increase of 13.3% because it's proportional to what we receive, because that's what we send back to the province for the evaluation service.
Et 100 000 pour des frais d'opération divers. On parle
$100,000
d'augmentation de 25 000
for an
formation.
increase for training, an increase of $25,000. Salaries of counselors represents an increase of $20,000. And that was over 4 years. It was accepted 3 years ago. And then there's property tax for the city as well. It will be impacted. And the budget for twinning. So there's a committee next year for the other Dieppe that will take more money. So that's the $100,000 increase on that end. Before the next slide, do you have any questions? No questions up until now. So we shall continue. So what I explained to you are expenses that are one-time transfers to reserves, etc. All that, I'm gonna repeat the same thing, but in another way. I presented it on a budget of 63 million, and I'm coming back to it, and I'm going to talk about the type of expense. So you're going to see it by a particular category of expense. For 63 million, it's an increase of 3.4 million. We have salaries, 19.7 million, almost 20 million, an increase of 1.53 million, and 1.1 for new postings, of 400,000 for increases for cost of life. External commissions are 11.6 million, an increase of 1.13 million, mostly for the RCMP. Cost of water for the fire station, fire services, $2.1 million. Capital and operations, 8.3 million. So we were talking about a little while ago an increase for the budget to replace the buildings that increased. So the 150,000 extra is in this $1.5 million. So we're evolving the way we think. We've got silos, monies for management of buildings, replacement of buildings. We have a lot of different types of accounts for management, but sometimes one needs more than the other. So we're trying to develop and continue to invest 8% more in all those programs on the side. And this year we're receiving more than we thought we would have received. So we're increasing budgets for the management of assets without putting it to one or the other, but we're putting it aside so that when we really need it, like Mr. Landry mentioned a while ago, we talked about buildings a while ago, but everywhere in the city, we're not at the where we should be with management of assets. We have to get better. We're young. Everything is good. So we can put some aside for future years when we will need it. So for the next 10 years, that's the plan. In 2030, 35, our assets will be older. We'll have to invest more. So today it allows us to put some aside for those years. Servicing of the debt has decreased to $7 million. Transfers to reserve, 400,000, a reduction of 200,000. That was the surplus of 3 years ago, from 600,000 to 300,000. And other operation expenses of $14 million, an increase of 225,000. On this, the next two slides are on the other operations expenses. This is new this year. We have new faces here as counselors. So I added this information this year to put more meat onto this $40 million that's in the category of these expenses. So with maintenance and repairs, it's a budget of more than 2 million. There's a reduction of 370,000, and it's because it's a one-shot deal from last year. It's the renovation of buildings for which we had a budget of 680,000 last year. So on top of this $300,000, we had $380,000 extra that came from reserves for this work. So that's where you see the decrease. Electricity and heating, it's about $2 million in budget, a reduction of 10,000, and property tax, $1 million. Snow removal, but not including salaries. So without the salaries, we're at $1 million, an increase of 100,000. Evaluation costs that I explained a while ago that we reimbursed to the province, 75 to 725,000. Uh, Sports fields and public fields, $621,000. Last year we had 45,000, for example, for the bridge that links Acadie, Amiro, to, we call it the Podicochon, the Pig Bridge. There will be a budget next year. There's another amount for park on Lavoie Street that was done last year, $50,000. So that's not in the budget this year. So we have a reduction of $70,000 this year. With communications, there is a budget of $560,000, reduction of 20,000. I explained it a little a while ago. If you can ask questions, it's the website for $100,000 budgeted, and we did it for 70,000. So we have $25,000 extra this year. Grants, it's an increase of 80,000 for 567,000. This is for the Arts and Culture Center. And contracts and studies, we have a budget of almost 500,000, and we have a reduction of 60,000. It was a one time for a study that Lemmy presented a while ago for AJL. So we had 40,000 last year to launch the project. And to continue with programming, the budget is stable, 484,000, increase of 35,000. It's programming at Uniplex. Insurance, 422 million, an increase of 10,000. Information technology, a budget of 378 million, an increase of 100,000. There were a few different parts in this 100,000. There was an update for the SSRE system, cameras that I discussed a while ago at intersections and timesheets, Zoom, and all that. So those are annual fees that will increase about $100,000. Equipment of 358 million for 20,000. So that's varied. It's not just pencils and pens, it's equipment that we need and tools at the operations center, what the firefighters need for uh, clothing or equipment. So this $20,000 was for the acquisition of a motor for the Zodiac for the fire services on the Chocolate River. As for council, I mentioned an increase of 35,000 on a budget of $327 million. It's partly salaries, but the second part, it's the interpretation service that we see here. Legal fees, an increase of 5,000 with a budget 250,000. Training 215,000, an increase of 25,000. It's for the fire services for regulations for services offered. So you see there are blocks of expenses over $200,000 for a total of 14 million. So this is a summary of all the other expenses that are under $200,000, but a total of 14 million. So an increase of 225,000, and one is for the master plan to start to see what the conclusions are will be in the master plan. And there are a few others, 2.4 million. There's water and sewage as well. We have to pay for the water use. That's a budget of 180,000. Gas is 165,000. I didn't mention. And there's a hotel tax that we have to take, the hotel levy, and that we have to give back for destination marketing. So we take that money and then we give it out again. So that's about $160,000 if everything goes well. So that's included in the 2.4 million. I have a double more I could mention. Are there any questions before I keep going to the next slide? No questions? With respect to external commissions, we have an increase of 1.1 million. On the first line, policing services for the RCMP, 800,000 for salaries that were negotiated from 2016 to 2021, and a portion of 300,000 to fix the problem for the cells. It's a cost that was a last minute. That was a little bit more painful. We had not budgeted for it, but at least we have a tax base to be able to finance it. But if it had happened last year, it would have been another story. It would have been more difficult. With Kodiak Transpo, we have a budget of 1.2 million, a reduction of $100,000 over last year. We have two reasons for this. Rather than having 4 buses on the road, we only have 3, so there's savings there, and it's better to rent one than to buy one. And we have on-demand service, so it should be less costly. So we see savings there of 100,000 over last year. expansion Dieppe, budget of 1.1 million. Solid waste, there should be an increase of $150,000.
Je pense qu'on est arrivé à échéance avec la compagnie qui présentement
We're up to the date with our services with this company, and I think it should be
comme des raisons
more costly with the new RFP.
Et l'augmentation est aussi due
And an increase is because as the number of units is increasing as well, so services are going to cost more. 3 plus $149,000. Insecticides is about 111,000. Capital Theater 75,000, and handicapped transportation $200,000. So a total of 8.6 million for external commissions, and an increase of $1.1 million over last year. Question, Mr. Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to go back to the Rcmp services. The budget that we see here, is it for this year? For the services, does it include the additions for the next year? Additional costs for the prisoners that we have to move. They said they were looking for 1.5 million extra because there's no place to keep the prisoners. But it's not a part of this cost, is it? In your budget? 1.5 million is for the 3 municipalities. For us, it's about 18% of that, about $250,000 in the budget that I presented. Okay. Councillor Leboutillier, thank you. I just wanted clarity on items we talked about during the year. Perhaps they're there. We have a new initiative for alarms. Did we put money aside to put our code in place? Are there any grants? The reason why you don't see it here is because it's within a budget where items were taken out and replaced in that budget. We talked as well about the portable toilets. Are we going to put money aside for Dover or dog parks or strategic parks? Are we doing that this year? Mr. Book. As an initiative for next year, it would be Dover, the first place. We're looking at renting with an option to buy portable services on wheels. You go inside and it looks like normal toilets. Naturally, they're on wheels, but once the water is connected, it's not mobile anymore. It has to stay there for a year. So for next year, that's what we want. And we're evaluating costs for units of 246 permanent ones in a unit with plans that we would know how much it would cost at first sight. The estimate we received for permanent toilets that would be built in a unit of 4 would be $250,000 plus connecting the water, and this is a building, so we're evaluating all those options. So what we propose for next year is this kind of trailer. And we have a presentation for you at some point with these options that we looked at. So that's the option that we have for next year. And next is if it succeeds, we could look at other things. So it's about half the cost to build a permanent building on the site. So we're looking at renting with an option to buy on 3 years. There's a percentage that's reduced on the acquisition. So the chemical systems and our climate, we already have one at Rotary Park, and we have difficulties with that. We're looking to replace others. So we're discussing with them to see what they suggest. So maybe we'll see what we'll do with our other facilities. So that's the option for next year for Dover and eventually improve others elsewhere. That's where the biggest volume is. And it eliminates as well the fact that our reservoir that has to be emptied and it'll be bigger. So if we have 6 mobile toilets, we could have 4 instead. So we're looking at all that for next year. And that's already in the budget? Yes, it's in the budget. Another item that I haven't seen are the shuttles. We want more shuttles or make them bigger. Is that in the budget? We're talking about capital budget that was presented. It's $600,000-700,000 in the capital budget to buy buses. So that's in the budget. It's not in the operations budget, but it's in the capital budget. Before we go to the last 3 slides, they're complex. Perhaps we should take a 5-minute break. There's consensus around the table. So we'll take 5 minutes.
Alors bonsoir, on est de retour.
We're back.
On va, comme je l'ai dit, je sais qu'il reste seulement que 3
There's
diapos. Il y aura certainement
only
des
3
questions aussi à
slides left,
venir.
but there are still questions to come, I'm
Ça
sure.
sera la fin.
And then it will be the end.
Alors,
So,
oui, mais ça, oui, égout, disons que ça
water
va
and
venir
storage,
couler.
it will flow
Oui.
nicely.
Oh, excusez-moi.
Sorry.
Monsieur Thériault.
Monsieur Thériault,
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
good evening again.
On continue, ça revient.
So, things are
Donc, la prochaine
going well. So, the next
diapositive, c'est vrai qu'il
slide,
y a
it's
beaucoup
true.
d'informations.
There's a lot of
C'est
information
vraiment
on
pour
it.
vous donner une idée
It's
de
written
grandeur ou
to
une
give
idée
you
de comment
an
tout
idea
le
of
budget de la ville, que
how
ce soit
all
au
the
niveau des
budget of
réserves,
the
du budget
city,
des
when
d'opération, des budgets de fonctionnement, taux de revenu général, etc. Comment est-ce que c'est que ça tombe ensemble, ceci? Parce qu'il y a vraiment un lien avec tous ces morceaux-là. Puis je vais commencer par remercier le service de communication qui a fait en sorte que ma diapositive est un petit peu plus belle que les années auparavant. Je sais pas si plus belle, c'est plus. Ils l'ont amélioré.
C'est peut-être plus clair.
C'est clair comme de l'eau. Qui sera les prochains budgets. Donc, on peut voir ici en haut, dans le milieu, on parle du budget de 63 millions. De où l'argent provient? Donc, à la gauche, le 57,5 millions au niveau des impôts fonciers. On a 4,7 millions au niveau des autres ressources. Et puis, on a un 900 000 qui provient de la réserve de fonctionnement général. Le 2,9 millions qu'on peut voir. Vu que je viens d'en parler, je vais continuer de ce côté-là. Donc, le 2,9 millions, c'est notre réserve de fonctionnement qu'on prévoit de maximiser à la fin de l'année. Donc, la réserve de fonctionnement ne peut être plus que 5% du budget de l'année précédente. Donc, on parle d'un budget d'environ 60 millions. 5% de 60 millions, ça nous donne le 2,9 millions environ. Si on continue sur le bas, on peut voir que toutes les lignes rouges ici, c'est l'argent qui sort du budget de fonctionnement. Il y en a qui retourne à la réserve de fonctionnement général. Il y en a qui va être utilisé pour financer les projets ou les budgets d'immobilisation générale. On a un peu qui s'en va au niveau de la réserve d'immobilisation générale, donc 100 000. Et il y a 2,1 millions qui est transféré au niveau du budget de fonctionnement général, 12 millions. Là-bas, en bas, dans le milieu, on peut voir notre budget d'immobilisation qui a été présenté le 25 octobre dernier de 23,9 millions. Les sources de financement, on parle d'un 1,5 million. Donc, 11,8 millions des autres sources qui ont été présentées à ce moment-là. Et il y a 3,1 millions qui proviennent de la réserve de capital ou d'immobilisation générale. Comme deux noms. Donc, la réserve d'immobilisation générale devrait se situer environ à 12 millions. Vous aurez plus de détails lorsque c'est qu'on va arriver au 13 décembre. À ce moment-là, on va faire les transferts à la réserve et on saura exactement qu'est-ce qui va être le montant. Et puis, donc, c'est ça. C'est vraiment vous donner une idée de l'interrelation qu'il y a entre
The interrelation that is between all of these that we just presented to you.
Il y a du stock.
There's a lot of stuff, but it's understandable.
Ma prochaine diapositive
My next slide
63 millions.
is the same 63 million, but this time it is presented according to the services.
Donc, on peut voir
So we can see
à gauche.
on the left side up,
Donc, en haut à gauche, on peut voir le capital de
we
l'opération.
can see the capital of the operation, the financial service that represent 25% of the total budget. And if we continue, the big pieces, recreation, 15.2 million, transportation, 8 million, 15.2%, sorry, transportation, 8%, green in the bottom. On the right, we can see that the police and fire, it's pretty well the same, 11.4, 11.3% total budget. So it give an appreciation of how the budgets are according to the services or the department involved.
Et en dernier lieu,
And last,
budget de fonctionnement général.
the general operation is really our forecast for 5 years. Where could we or what do we think will happen in the next few years? The first line, we talk about the increase of the pie, 13.3% as we know it today. Now, what will happen in the future? Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We try to orient the best we can. But now, nevertheless, we're cautious. For 2023, as I mentioned, in new building, it represents 3% in 2022. So I estimate, according to what we see in the building permit, that the permit that we have received, we can see that for the year 2023, we can budget another 3%. That could represent the new uh, buildings. But at 70% of the houses in the app were not maximized at 10%. There's a lot of expired that are coming next year. When I was talking about a house of 300,000, there will be 340 or 330 next year. We'll go from 330 to 345 should the value remain the same. So it means there's another $15,000 that will be at property tax. If we apply the same reasoning for 70% of the other houses that receive the same benefit, there should be some more money that would come into the municipality next year. So the 5% follows that reasoning. It can be more, can be less, but that is what explain it right now. And for following years, well, we go downward 2.5 to 75, 2.5. And of course, with this scenario, we can see that the property tax, we see the reduction of 9 cents should remain stable until 2025. Why 2025? We get an increase. That's where we estimate that the expenses for the new building of the RCMP would come into account. There will be another 800,000 to 1 million more that will arrive for the rental of the police department. If that's the case in 2025, it would mean 1.5 cents increase because, yes, the extra cost, but the tax is quite low. If it remained at 3%, we wouldn't need the 1.5 cents. We would remain stable for the 5 years. 53.95. That is the rate that we are proposing today. Next, I just explained there's no deficit. We estimate with budget that balance. Immobilization, we have 20.9 million because a lot of money come from other places, but subsequent year it's a little less. So we plan between 13, 14 million in project that would mean 5 million in loan for the following year, except the next year. But between now and then, it'll be 4.5%. Madam Godbout, question. Yes, thank you.
Question à savoir
Question
dans vos projections, est-ce
in
qu'il y a
your
un rôle
projection,
pour le potentiel
what
de l'inflation dans vos
role is
projections?
the
Est-ce que
inflation,
dans
the
le fait
potential of inflation
des dépenses de la
playing
ville et des
to
coûts
see the expenses of the city and the costs and
les besoins de la ville?
the needs of the city? I have about 5 different percentage that I apply to different expenses. We can see that the 14 million each year that we maintain quite stable. So I apply 1% for the salary, slightly higher for the operation capital, even higher, 2%. So I vary the percentage according to the history of the expenses and I extrapolate them in the future.
Autre question,
No more question?
Brideau.
Monsieur Brideau.
Absolument.
Thank you,
Pour
Worship.
revenir sur un
I
détail,
want to come back on the
est-ce que
detail.
c'est approprié tout
I
le
don't
long
know if it's
en fait,
appropriate.
le bâtiment de l'ouverture de nouveaux
Has to do with the RCMP building, the new building that
Sachant
they're
que,
building. Yeah.
on le sait à l'heure actuelle,
Well, we know
va
presently that
passer une motion, il va
review
dissocier
wants to
le projet de
withdraw
participation.
from
Est-ce
the
que
participation
ça n'arrive
project.
pas,
If that was the case,
mais ça arrivait,
it's not
est-ce
yet,
que
but
ça peut
if
affecter
it was, can
notre
that affect
pourcentage de
our
participation?
percentage of percentage?
Je vais répondre hypothétiquement
I will
parce que
remain
c'est pas
hypothetically because I don't know, but
de
should the review
formule de
not
partage
be in the formula of sharing of costs anymore, their sharing is 12%. That means
on
that
hériterait de
we would
18%
inherit
et
18% of the 12% that a review would not be paying anymore.
Et donc, si je prends
So
18%, ça
if
fait
we take
20%.
18%, if I take 20% on 12,
Donc, c'est sûr que au lieu
so
d'être
of
18%,
course
c'est peut-être 20, 23%.
18%
Au pire,
would be
donc
20,
17%.
21% that we
On
would
va
pay. It would
ajouter
have an impact, yes, definitely. Thank you.
Autre question?
Other questions?
Et en dernier lieu, on peut voir le ratio d'endettement
Lastly,
d'année en année. Notre plan
this
financier
our
en
financial
2026
plan.
s'avait fixé comme objectif de
We
l'avoir
had
descendu
fixed
en
to have it at
2026.
10% in
On
2026.
pourrait, selon
We
moi,
could
l'avoir en bas de 9%.
have it under
C'est bien
9%,
dans ce contexte-ci.
which is excellent in this context.
C'est bien. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions de la part des membres du conseil?
Other questions from the councillors?
Non.
No.
Alors, on continue avec
So we continue
l'eau et l'égout.
with water and storage.
OK. Donc, ça va vite, ça va bien. Le budget
It's going fast. Water and storage
est
operation
assez
budget
simple.
should be quite
Finalement,
simple, easy,
dans le sens qu'on ne change
in
pas
that
grand-chose
we
cette année.
don't change too many things this year
Donc,
with the water and
le
storage. So you
tarif
can see
unitaire de 2021
the
sera
rate,
les mêmes
the unit rate
en 2026.
2021 will be the same in
Autre
2022.
augmentation
We're proposing no increase, so we remain at $948, $948.
total.
The total rate, $476 for the water,
Ou je vais dire 472 pour les
472 for the storage, but it's divided to $262 for storage and 210 for Transaqua. I've received last week the confirmation that Transaqua is keeping the rate at 210 per unit. That means that it has no changes. It's our second year in a row. In 2020, the rate was also the same, $948.
Donc, les sources de fonds, mais c'est
So
pas
the
complet en
source of
proportion
funds, it's equally divided between water and storage. 40% come from storage and 41% from water, 5.7 and 5.6 million for both.
Le fonctionnement général, donc ça
The
contribue
general operation is 2.1 million. I've explained that represent 15%.
en dernier lieu, en
And
4%
last, we talk about 4% that the other
mentionne comme
revenues, when we talk about the surplus from previous years, in this case, it's $91,000. We talk about the borrowing that are the phase one of aviation, the city borrowed the amount of money. One portion belongs to water storage and one belongs to the general operation. And when we are reimbursed, it's a revenue that comes to the city and they are transferred to the reserve or transferred from the reserve that are the other income. But we have sales as far as water source. So it's been we've been in that process for 3 years. Property that we own as for this water source. There's work. There's being done to revamp silviculture, and the sale of that wood is quite good for the budget.
Donc, au niveau des dépenses,
So,
on passe
expense
en
wise,
2021 de
we go from
13,7 millions à
13.5% to 13.87%.
300 000.
So 300,000 more.
Il n'y avait pas de transfert à la réserve
There's no transfer to the reserve in
mais
2021,
les ponctuels
but I removed the
système
punctual of
de vente
2021
40 000
system and small expense of $40,000.
donc qui donne un budget de
So
base
it
de
gives a basic
13,7
budget of
millions.
13.53
Il y a
million.
quatre types de
So
dépenses
there's
qui
four
étaient
type of
présentés
expenses
dans
that
notre
are
budget.
presented in the other budget.
Ponctuel de
Talk about
2022
punctual
de
of
115 000
2022 of $215,000.
70 000
New
transfert à la réserve
$10,000 transfer of
et une
$190,000 to the
augmentation de
reserve and a
300 000
reduction in the
550 000
existing expenses of
ensemble
150,000.
en détail
I
de
just
5%.
presented that uh, just
Le
now.
coût ponctuel de
As for the
2022
punctual of
était de
2022 of
la première
215,000,
année était
the
135
big
000 lié à la
part was
programmation
the
qui sert
program
justement à la programmation
that served for the
du système.
programming
Ce qui
of
est là,
the system.
lorsque je dis ce qui est là, c'est plus
When I say SCADA, it's
pas le constructeur, mais celui
not the builder, but
qui produit.
the one who offers the product. Right now we have Rockwell, and we want to change it to VD Scalar. Rockwell is not made for municipality, but Moncton made the transfer last year or 2 years ago. So here we want to purchase the program and install it. What is it? It's to measure, control, if you wish, the pumping station that we have, and with the storage to have all the volume, the sensor, and the bells and whistles, if you wish, to make sure that the system is well operational. There's $60,000 phase one. The residential water meter, as we mentioned in the past, will come back to you at the beginning of next year in the first 3 months, but I don't know. But so, what is it that we will propose dealing with the meter? In case we go ahead, we have to reserve a budget for next year, and that budget of 60,000 to get some information. Right now, there's no house in Dieppe that has a meter. We want to start capturing the information to really start to get involved in that environment. That's why we have $60,000 for phase one in case we should go ahead with the water meter. $20,000 is the uh, upgrade of some conversion and software. As for $90,000 of new things, it's a portion of new position that we presented earlier in the general budget. There are positions in the city. We take a percentage that is financed by the general and a percentage that is also financed by water and sewage because there is a link depending on the position that is being offered. These new positions that were offered, there's $90,000 that belong to water and sewage. And the transfer to reserve $190,000. That $190,000 is kind of a benefit, a one shot deal that is linked to the purchase of water from Moncton. And I will go there immediately to explain that. So the existing expenses go down, reduced by 150,000. Big reason is that we have saving of the purchase of water from the city of Moncton for this year. The agreement we have with them is that we pay the true price. In that, in 2022, we'll pay what 2020 really costs for the city of Moncton uh, in terms of production of water, because the formula we have assets also that we share with them, such as the water line that comes to the and I'm talking about the three municipalities for the three municipalities. So the formula that we have make it such that in 2022 for us, it's a saving $90,000. So we purchased for 3.3 millions to 43 cents instead of 54 cents as we know it now in 2021. That's why there's a saving, but that saving will not live long. Next year, the year after, in 2023, we think it should be 50 cents. So we will almost have caught up with 54 cents. It varies all the time. And their forecast in this case, they were forecasted the blue elk. It's a lot less. The government took a big part of it, so it made it such that it reduced the cost for us. As for additional costs that the operation that we increased by 8% per year, same thing with the asset management. There's 7% as the service to the debt is quite stable, $20,000 more. Salary, well, the same explanation as earlier. It's a cost of living one, but it's part of cost of living. So it's the expenses we presently have for water and sewage that increased by $44,000. As for the expenses of information technology, we say 30%, but it has to do with safety as well as the Zoom software, the same expense we had earlier in the general. The other expenses, administrative expenses, are operational and uh, won't mention them, just small amount. We talk about $6,000 related to the increase of salary and the interpretation, $8,000 for the video inspection of the sewage. Today, we have to go in the house to be able to inspect the pipe in the future. We won't have to go in the house following the purchase of this process, if you wish. That may cost $8,000. We have a 5,000 for the maintenance of operation. We also have what is quite popular. It costs more, of course, but when the resident costs 100% of the invoice at the beginning receive a discount of 5%, but more and more some residents want to benefit from that opportunity. So they make it such that the 5% is an expense for us that is growing. In this case, it represents $13,000 out of $36,000. And last, the cost related to Transaqua. Yes, it stays at $210 a unit, but the number of units increase, making that there's $12,000 more in expenses. So here we can see the budget, what it represents, close to $14 million. As far as the category will be the same that I will mention again, but by group or by category, we can see the salaries that increased by 132,000 to be at 3.2 million. It's a portion of new things that increase with cost of living, purchase of water, the city of Moncton, that reaches 1.4 million, treatment of water waste at 3,000, that is at 2.5 million now. The operation increased at 1.36 million, so an increase of close to 100,000. Service of the debt, a small increase of 20,000 at 2.7 million. The operation water and sewerage, that's where the big increase is 217 to $28,000. But it's like I explained earlier, it's expenses related to the operation and transfer to reserve. We can this year put $190,000 in reserve. That is related to the fact that we reduce the purchase of water from the city next year. It will cost us $230,000 more than this year to transfer to the reserve. May not happen. It depends on what we've planned for next year. And the deficit for last year, that continues. It's a deficit of close to $3 million that we saw it last 2 years ago, because it's a utility budget, make it such that we can spread it over 4 years. So it doesn't hurt as much the following year. In this case, we talk about $670,000 the second year of application over 4 years. We're almost done. Going well. So the same diagram that shows what interaction that is with the water and storage in the other budget of the city. We received 2.2 million on the left. That is accounted in the 11.3 million that comes from water and storage rate, and the 500,000 from the other sources that I explained earlier. 13.5 million. The budget of water and storage operation distribute the monies. 1.4 million go to the uh, capital budget and 200,000 in the reserve, capital reserve. The reserve on the left for operation of water and storage, that when it's maximized to approximately 700,000, that is 5% of the budget for last year and this year. The capital budget at the bottom in the middle is 5.4 million. That is financed with a loan of 2.2 million, the other source of 3 million. And on that, there's a 200,000 that should be transferred to reserve. That is a surplus of the money that we use for the program of replacement of, that will not be used. I'm at the last one here. What do we plan for water and storage rate wise? It's not big increases. Then 948, it's been the third year. We had in 2020, 2021, 2022. We planned an increase of $8 next year. That is less than 1%. And then another $8 in 2026. As I said earlier, that is less than 1%. The operation budget should remain pretty stable, 13 to 14.5 million, no, percent. Capital rate between 3 and 5 million over the next few years. Now, what we have, especially in 2023 to 2026, it's an estimate. That is to say that for the water meter counter, we have 3.5% from 2023 to 2026. Maybe it won't be that formula that we will use for the time it is, but it it's only the beginning of next year that we'll see what will be the winning formula. So, of course, it represents more loan. That's why before the last slide we see for the next over 4 millions, and it should remain stable to eight between 18 and 19%. Last note on this, the municipality or the general operation, the government asks that we can't go more than 20% in the debt ratio. We were at 13, we should go down to 11, so we're okay. The utility budget, such as water sewage, we could go up to 50%. It seems 20% seems a lot, but we're well under the 50% that that we can use. This concludes my. Thank you very much. First question come from Councillor McNaughton, Monsieur Lantaigne.
Juste
Thank
curieux,
you.
le ratio d'endettement
I'm
pour
curious the ratio
à
of
l'année,
debt
c'est-tu
in
aux
2021.
alentours de 19% aussi?
It's around 19% also. I don't have it in front of me, but
OK.
it would be within these
Est-ce
figures.
qu'idéalement, on voudrait voir ce chiffre-là? Je sais qu'au niveau du ratio d'endettement général, on est à 14, puis on dit qu'on aimerait être autour de 15, je
Generally,
pense.
we're at
Est-ce que c'est
14, and
ça
should we
qu'on
go down
part
to
du
10?
idéal qu'on vise ou on est à peu près
Is
là?
there one that we should look at? This is coming with the financial plan that's not established yet. We're waiting for directives on water meters because it will have an impact on the rest of the budget. So we're waiting for that because to reduce the debt ratio, we would have to raise the rates of water and sewer.
Merci.
Thank you.
Je ne vois pas d'autres
No
questions
other
pour le
questions?
moment. Il semble qu'on est là, on est rendu là. Mais
I guess that's it.
quand même, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions
Are there any
concernant les
questions
budgets qui ont été présentés ce soir?
on the budgets presented this evening that you had no chance to ask
Explications dans certains dossiers,
for explanations
clarifications,
on certain files or for
J'apprécie
clarification?
j'apprécie
Councillor
la présentation,
Goodbull,
Madame Denis,
I
concernant
appreciate the
l'augmentation
comments
d'émissions de
on
ça a beaucoup aidé l'économie. Ça
the
rassure
indicators. It helps us with our analyses, so that would be very useful if we could do it in the future. That's just a comment. Thank you. I asked a lot of questions.
Alors, bonne fin de soirée à tous.
Have a good evening,
On
everyone,
se revoit
and we'll be back next week to discuss various files and the adoption of the budget.
Merci, bonne fin de soirée.
Thank you. Have a good evening.